Tension on deck.
Oh, what's going on, man? Right, another exciting Wednesday evening. If I'm muted, you muted me.
No, you came off.
All right.
Probably a little delay. You're good.
All right. Oh, here we are, another Wednesday, right?
Another
Got the Knicks
Wednesday.
going
I'm
on.
back. I'm back. I'm feeling better. Thank you, everybody, for all the well wishes and comments, even on the other shows. And yeah, Sleepy Joe, the district surgeon, put me back full duty. Didn't even give me the full week. So here we are. A lot of stuff going on. We're going to talk about the Knicks in the finals, right? First time since 1999 on a good run. They lost their first game on Monday and had a little excitement after the game. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the security measures that were put in place at MSG with regards to President Trump being there, which elevates security measures, as we know and as we've spoken about in the past. So we'll talk about that, but then we're going to talk mostly about what's going on with what happened with the watch party over at Bryant Park. Mayor Mamdani sponsored a watch party, which is pretty funny because he sponsored it, right? But he wasn't present. He was at the game.
Yeah, $1,000 ticket. Where did he find that ticket?
Oh, he got it directly from MSG, I was told. He bought it directly from them, so he got it for the face value. Not like hardly anybody else in the world paid face value for those tickets.
Yeah, no.
I know somebody that I play cards with, and he paid $7,500 probably around the same seats. Was at the game, but yeah. So there was a lot of chaos, some violence. We'll talk about deployment. We'll talk about how the NYPD responded to the chaos. And we got a lot of videos to show. There's a ton of videos that are playing out there all over the internet. And so we're gonna watch some of those. We're gonna break them down. Some of them just shows the chaos, but a few of them we're gonna look at, and then we're gonna talk about the tactics that were deployed and give our perspective on those tactics and how they either helped or hindered what was going on out there. And then ultimately, when SRG came in, how that response of SRG wound up affecting the evening, and then talk maybe about the difference between the SRG and patrol response, right? And the need for the SRG that we've talked about from day one, since Mamdani's been saying that he wants to disband the Strategic Response Group, the SRG. And I think this was just another example of how it's not a viable option.
Yeah, it's funny how the unit they want to disband, or he's been, claiming through his whole campaign was to get rid of, is the one that actually kind of saved everybody the other night. So it's pretty crazy. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Let's see if the deployment tonight is greater. I see what Terry's saying now, that the watch party at MSG is called off for tonight. I did Google it, and it did say it's off. I know there was something where they were doing a ticketed event, right? They were only allowing ticketed people inside the frozen zone.
Well, yeah, I've been trying to monitor it myself throughout the day so we can come on with the best information, because I had heard during the day that the watch party was canceled. But then when you do look it up online, I got the same thing as you, that they severely limited it, that the frozen zone is going to remain the same as it was for POTUS on Monday, and that everybody coming in is going to be screened just like they were on Monday, just like they are on New Year's Eve, right? And once you get into the frozen zone, if you leave, you can't get back in, even if you're a ticket holder. And they limited it to 1,000 tickets. So if it's canceled, I don't see that. I haven't seen that. You said you just looked and it's still saying it's on?
When you Google it, Google AI says it's canceled. Just cancel. It says the planned outdoor watch party at Madison Square Garden for Game 4 of the 2026 NBA Finals was canceled by MSG officials on June 10, 2026, just hours before tip-off. That's what AI overview is saying on Google.
Oh,
So
so now that well, I know that MSG, the owners, were very upset. They put out a statement, and they were very upset with the mayor and the police commissioner for restricting the watch party for those people coming in for Game 4 to the 1,000 participants. And now they're canceling it altogether. And Lily, I don't know if it's because of the incoming weather. I don't know how bad the storm is going to be. It got pretty dark over here. I just got in a couple minutes ago, and it is pretty dark here in Queens. But I don't know if it was canceled by MSG. I don't know what the reason is for that.
I don't know either. But I know, truthfully, it's not fair to the store owners and the bars. I mean, I used to go to Ranger games all the time, and it used to be the Penn Bar was right on the corner there. I think it was
Yeah.
8th, and we used to go there before the game. So it's not fair to all these owners at a bar that rely on all that, traffic, especially during a big playoff game. I'm sure they're freaking packed, and they're probably everybody's going to go in there, drink, watch the games. And then once the game's over, they'll go out onto the streets. But I guess if it's all part of the frozen zone, you literally, are keeping the businesses shut down, even the parking garages, all those things that are in there. It becomes very problematic for the owners, and I don't think that's fair at all. So,
Yeah. I just checked. Thank you, Marlon. That's Marlon that posted the ABC 7 thing. I just clicked on it, and it says Knicks Game 4 official watch party outside MSG canceled. Security, traffic, and more. And that was at 5:07 p.m. So yeah, you're talking about just over 3 hours prior, and people had it, and it was frozen since 4 o'clock. So people going to the watch party had to plan their whole day, take off from work, get to the city early by public transportation. Some of them may have even been in the frozen zone already, and now you're canceling it. That's bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before 5 o'clock, the Knicks announced the watch party previously scheduled outside MSG would not happen. The decision to cancel came after MSG and its owner accused the mayor and NYPD of turning the neighborhood into a police state and insisting the fans should be allowed to gather outside the arena unrestricted. We're going to talk about that because I don't agree with that statement at all. The teams lost on Monday night. Knicks fans spilled out to Bryant Park. All right, we're going to get into that, the 21 arrests and everything else. So, yeah. And then
Oh, you're telling me that once
Mamdani,
they got in frozen zone, they couldn't get out?
yeah, it was
they're
in
locked
the paper. Once you go in the frozen zone, even if you have a ticket, if you leave the frozen zone, you cannot get back in.
Oh, right. Okay. That's similar to Times Square. Same thing.
Right. But we always let the people go to the bathroom and everything else. They're not
Oh,
wearing diapers.
I know. We let those people pee in the diapers usually.
No, I would always try to be as reasonable as possible,
How do you
but
know
yeah,
they
then,
weren't going and getting a gun?
well, they're still within the frozen zone. So,
Hey, in The Godfather, they used to hide the gun in the bathroom, so you never
yep,
know.
in the back, in the
Yeah.
top, in the toilet, in the old pull down flusher,
Yeah.
right? So MSG, this is from Mayor Zoran Mamdani. MSG requested a permit for a watch party of 500 to 999 fans. We approved that permit for 999 fans. Mr. Dolan has now decided to cancel the watch party. I know this is breaking hearts across our city, but it's but there's one thing Knicks fans don't need permission for. It's showing up for our team wherever we may be, no matter the block or the borough. Knicks in 5. So he's encouraging them to still go out into the streets, which is ridiculous as the mayor. That's, to me, that's irresponsible, but not unexpected for Mamdani. And we'll get into his lack of response to the incidents of Monday night also. Yeah. So listen, yeah, fire detective Marlon Bethel, smart move on Tish's part. I agree. I agree on that. But All right, let's get into did you want to say anything else before we get into I'm sorry. I just wanted to read that because I was reading it. It's like this is all happening as we come. I should put up the breaking news
That's it.
graphic, right?
Breaking news. Yeah. No,
Breaking
yeah.
news. I'm not looking for it. I should load it into the folder each week, but I'm not because everything seems to happen when we're going on the air, right? How many
Yeah.
times does something big happen as we're going on the air? You know?
I just don't think it's fair to the fans. It's
No.
not fair to the store owners that were already locked out. So now what happens? All the barriers, all those metal fence. There was metal fencing. It wasn't even that fencing
Yeah.
was used. The last time I saw that fencing was at the RNC, the Republican National Convention in 2004. That was the last time I saw that. But I don't think it's fair to everybody, that they're shutting everybody out. And yeah, maybe MSG is blaming the Madami's saying it's MSG. I don't know. There's a lot of pointing fingers around and just can't coordinate and have a good time. It could be easily policed, but
Yeah.
they don't want to
Like here,
do it.
Veronica
So.
Electron is saying, and thanks for tuning in, Veronica. I haven't seen you in a bit. There aren't enough police officers to control the crowds. I think Rob and I are both going to disagree. Rob just said that it could be policed. And I agree that proper deployment, proper preparation, and these events can absolutely be policed properly. But we're gonna get into that. We're gonna give our perspective on what did happen and what we think could have happened and could have been done better. But so yeah, thrown off a little bit because, like I said, that came over just as we're going on the air. But let's go back to Monday night and what happened Monday night. So, right, Midtown went on lockdown for Trump visit as the Knicks dropped Game 3 to the Spurs. But whenever the president comes into town, the security measures are really extraordinary. They really are. Everything is frozen. Zones are frozen. We talked about this. You gave your expert opinion and perspective on it from being in special operations and being part of those meetings and the preparation for security and perimeters and layered security for when the president's in town. And there was already going to be a big detail, but they upped the detail. They put the frozen zone in. I'm going to show some pictures and everything else about that because the president was attending Game 3, which wasn't a surprise. As soon as they made the finals, he said he's going to attend Game 3 in New York City. So there was plenty of time for planning, right? And what's the military expression? Proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance. And I don't believe that there was proper planning for the entire event. For Madison Square Garden, I think it went off it was uneventful. I think they planned properly for Madison Square Garden. It was handled properly. It was policed properly, and there was not one incident. But we'll get into the planning, the preparation, the execution for Bryant Park in a little while. But when you heard the president was coming in, what were your initial thoughts on that?
Well, the initial thoughts were, I know some people were like, well, why is the president going? It's going to cause disruption and everything else. But you know what? He's the president of the United States. He's also a Knicks fan. He's been seen at the MSG numerous times before. He's friends with Dolan, right? He knows Dolan from being in the city, so he has all the rights of a sitting president and as a fan.
I think there were pictures of him at MSG going back from all the Maples.
Yeah, maybe. No, he literally has all the rights and privileges to go there, right? As a friend, as a fan, as a president. So, did they have to take this step? Yeah, they did police around Madison Square Garden appropriately. Develop the frozen zone. Like I said, on the I think it was on Monday's show or whatever. He's going to have a one-way in, right? The normal way in MSG, what I've seen before in MSG, when the president of the United States goes. He comes in and there's a rotunda that they can drive up to inside MSG. And that's the only way he's going to go in, because he's not going to get out of his car outside MSG. So everything's going to have to be secured. And on top of that, everybody going into the venue is going to be vetted by the United States Secret Service. All right, whether it's TSA agents, whether it's United Customs officers, they're going to be screened a lot harder and more thoroughly than you would normally go through MSG security. But you could see that the fans got there early and they understood what they had to do, followed the lines, and got in. So I didn't have a problem with them going there. And I knew that venue, hey, listen, we've talked about it before, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Butler, PA, so they made sure that this was, airtight. And it's a hard location. They hardened up the area where the president's going to be, and they hardened up the area where he comes out and goes to the skybox that he looked like he was in with Dolan and stuff. So I think they did a good job there, and I don't think it's hard we've done it before. So maybe they dusted off some of the old plans, and the NYPD said, "All right, let's do it," and then worked with Secret Service and came through at that location. But it's not hard to put those barriers way out and freeze everybody out. Those barriers are the best barriers in the world. They're not like the bullshit metal barriers or wood barriers that we have. So
yeah, I have I'll throw up that video of the fencing you're talking about, the security fencing. But just quick to answer Housing for Life, does MSG have to compensate the city for police presence at an MSG event? The federal government does reimburse the city for presidential details. So there are federal funds, because like when we do the overtime and everything else, you get a POTUS detail number to put on your overtime slip, and the job, believe you me, is calculating how many police officers were assigned and what it cost the city to assign them there for the day, and they're billing the federal government for that. As far as MSG for an event for tonight's game, I'm not sure how that works. If they have to pay back the city for police presence. Do you know offhand, Rob? I'm not sure.
No, I know you're right about the reimbursement through the federal government. Like you said, that's why we get a detail number. But I don't know what they do with this. I mean, if I'm a MSG, I say, you guys are responsible for the streets, not me, right? So I'm not going to be paying you, but I don't know. It could be. But I'm not familiar with that.
Trump should have stayed the hell home. I disagree. I agree with you, Rob. He's the president of the United States. He's the first president to go to an NBA final game, but he's not the first president to go to a sporting event. Presidents have gone to sporting events in the past. He is and has been a Knicks fan, and yeah, the problem that happened in the city was not because Trump was there. I think personally, the fact that Trump was there made the NYPD step up their security game around MSG and put out those 900 officers throughout the whole city, put up the security fence that we're going to show. And I think it prevented more incidents from happening, because it didn't happen at Woolman Rink and it didn't happen at the Brooklyn Bowl. I didn't see anything. Did you see anything online? I didn't see anything online or in the news from where MSG sponsored Woolman Rink in Central Park and the Brooklyn Bowl watch parties, right? So, but let's take a look at what you're talking about, Rob, because you're right. This is not regular. Like these friends, this is no joke. And it just keeps going on and on all the way around. The guard. Now, is that ours or is that the federal government and they supply it?
So just from my experience with the Republican National Convention, that was from the federal government. That wasn't NYPD. I've never seen them use that before, other than for a federal event like that. But that's pretty good stuff. That, you know what, the NYPD should get that, because that in itself could quell some things and protect businesses when they have these out of control demonstrations.
Yeah. Speaking exactly of that, some businesses worried about, there was some minor incursions, you want to call them, or uprisings, or civil disorder after they won the playoffs, the playoffs before getting into the finals. So businesses worried about crowds, worrying about people acting up as they did outside of Bryant Park. Over here are at their own cost now putting up plywood over their businesses to protect their interests. And it's sad that you have to do this. It really is. This is something that the city should be celebrating, and is celebrating. And you have these knuckleheads that are coming in and just want to start wilding out and getting silly. It's retarded.
I also think by putting up all that fencing and everything else around MSG and securing that perimeter and pushing any of these other watch parties to other locations, that caused some of the anguish and violence. Because I think John and Eric and Marlon had mentioned it was like 900 cops at Bryant Park, which seems to be an appropriate amount, but it's clearly it wasn't enough. I mean, once the crowd, or where were they when the shit hit the fan? So
I think
I don't
900
know.
was. I think 900 was the total for the entire detail.
Well, what? So you're saying what? All the president and Bryant Park?
For MSG and Bryant Park. I could be wrong.
I thought they said just at Bryant Park, but
it's possible. Because there were videos of the cops mustered up, and it went on for blocks. The cops mustered up the entire detective bureau minus a few different units, counterterrorism, and the precinct detective squads and the homicide squads. Mike, we spoke on that already at the opening of the show. So Mike Freeze also texted me about that. So yeah, but
I mean, you get in the chat, you got Jose Vega, who knows a lot about disorder control. One of the experts. He says he totally agrees that all events can be policed properly and 100%. In conjunction with proper deployment of equipment and personnel. We've done it in the past. We've done it for everything. So when you look at Times Square and you look how many people come, and how well that's policed, the screening, the layering of pens and the closing of particular pens as they get full, and so forth and so on, going all the way down from 42nd Street all the way down to 59th if need be. I mean, it's done. Counter sniper teams, heavy weapon teams. So I mean, it's policed correctly, and then they do the outside streets, so that anything problematic over there, there's police out there as well. So to say it can't be done, no, that it can be. It takes it's manpower intense, but
let's listen when we talk about preparation, right? So what's one of the things we heard about, right? Was it 6 people were stabbed downstairs in Penn Station earlier in the week?
Penn Station, yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So you have things like this going on in Penn Station, and oh boy, what did I just do? I just pulled that video somewhere else. I just dragged it somewhere. Sorry. All right. And that the MTA police and the NYPD went down there and did a complete sweep prior to Game 3, and they probably did it again tonight before Game 4. So you don't see things like this.
Who's got a secret? Who's got a secret? Who's got drugs for me? Anybody got crystal meth for me? Anybody got crystal meth for me? You got a secret for me?
You gotta get out of here.
I want a job!
I mean, and there you go with those MTA cops with their hands in the vest. We all hate that, you know. But that's all part of the preparation as well, is to make sure that the area is secure, right? And then, when you prepare, you have no problems. These are people going into MSG. It's an inconvenience, but it's orderly.
I mean, when you talk about communication, right? So they all knew the president was going to be there. They knew that you had to be there 2 to 3 hours before. It's the same thing like when you're going on a plane, right? When you're going on a plane, you got to be there 2 to 3 hours ahead, especially if it's Newark or LaGuardia or especially Kennedy or whatever. You never know. And you get there, and you know what? You don't have crap in your backpack. You don't have your foldable knife. You don't have your anything over to 3 ounces. You follow everything so you can get in through quickly and fast. So once everybody knew it was the proper planning was put in place, and everybody knew to get there early. So that's good, and it was probably good for MSG, because you know what? If I'm going in MSG a little early, 2 or 3 hours, I'm going to buy the $20 beer because I'm in early. So they're going to get a little extra funding. So I don't know. I just think that it was done right. It was done right there. I mean, Mike Freed had mentioned that he didn't think that, or Dolan had mentioned that it wasn't the Secret Service. It was just NYPD. I would have to push back on Dolan, because that's not going to happen. The Secret Service isn't going to let the NYPD decide what they're doing for a presidential visit. So, that's done in conjunction. I've been at those meetings. So Secret Service is in charge. So they're gonna give us a little leeway, because they know that the amount of people we put towards it and our capabilities. But it's not anything done that's done independently by the NYPD. Yeah, they could add layers, but Secret Service also has to know that as well, because they have to do emergency egresses. They have to do hospital routes. There's a lot of other things that go into play. So, and then they got a huge motorcade too. So,
yeah. Well, listen, we've all seen it, right? We've all worked it. A lot of people in the chat have worked it. But for those of you in our audience that have never seen a presidential motorcade, and how extensive it really is, it's not just the president and the Secret Service and like you see in the movie where they're in the SUV that pops up with the 50 caliber machine gun, and everything else. There's a lot of vehicles. The press travels in the motorcade. There's an EMS ambulance, bus number 1. EMS has an ambulance that is used solely for when the president's in town, and it sits idle when he's not in. It's only used for the motorcade. Let's take a look at the motorcade coming by. A lot of vehicles, you know. And
Yeah,
I
no, I mean, go ahead.
no, I said I give those cops credit. You're always taught face the crowd when the motorcade goes by, and you always see the cops turning around. They want to get a glimpse of what's going on or whatever the hell. Those guys were actually standing their post and face the crowd. I remember Chief Hoyle used to walk around, and I was at I forget what it was. It was some ticker tape parade. It was such a waste. It wasn't even a New York team, and there was nothing going on. And he came by screaming to turn around and face the crowd. And I turned around, and I literally was standing in front of a building that was closed, and there was nobody there, and there wasn't even anything on the street. He was yelling at me to turn around. But those cops, besides hanging out again on their vests on that exterior carrier, were doing what they were supposed to do. But you see the extensive amount of vehicles. I mean, we've seen it. I don't know. Have you ever been in the motorcade?
In the motorcade? No. But I know that, I know there's Intel cars in the motorcade, or Intel cars. There's if you saw the ESU REP, that's in there in case there's a pin job or something happens, they got to do extrication. There's 2 CAT teams, Secret Service, NYPD counter assault teams. There's the hazmat hammer team from Secret Service in case somebody throws white powder or some sort of chemical disbursement. So they're huge, and you see some of the white vehicles like you mentioned earlier, usually the press. So it's big. You know what's crazy is when they pull into a particular location, and let's say it's like the Roosevelt Hotel, and they come in and it's a tented arrival. POTUS gets out, and then they got to turn that whole motorcade around because the way they all came in, there's only one way in, one way out, and you got to watch them how they spin all those vehicles around. So, but yeah, that's pretty impressive, and it's you got highway in the lead, so it's pretty good. So
yeah. So Jose Vega again, New Year's Eve, July 4th, fireworks, UNGA, the U.S. Open, which I was a part of for a decade, all done because of a robust plan. Also, you can plan proactively. There should be a plan for the Knicks victory parade set up already. 100%. That's true. There should be pre-planning done. You put these things in effect. You bring all the people around the table, like you said, and you come up and you talk about what are potential issues, what are potential threats, and how are we going to mitigate them? How are we going to post our police officers? Where are we going to post our police officers? What are we going to do if this happens? What are we going to do if that happens? So as far as Madison Square Garden and locking down the garden, it was done. So I call that a win.
yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Even for the victory parade, just dust off the old plans and make adjustments. Everything's been done in this city before, so I don't think that to have a plan that doesn't. When you look at Bryant Park and the failures that occurred there, there's I can remember. I don't know if it was Obama or somebody went to Bryant Park, as the president. So I mean, there's plans, so you have to be prepared. But when you put your guard down, I think everybody's going to be fine. Everything's going to be good. No, I think you have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So I think that's one problem that I see in the current administration of the NYPD is that they just think everything's gonna be fine, we'll be okay. But you have to have contingency plans, and you have to have immediate action plans. It's called emergency action plan, an EAP. What happens if the shit hits the fan, and what are we doing? But maybe they'll start putting that together.
Right. So what I'm hearing, and what I also heard that John and Eric had mentioned on the show this morning, is that there wasn't a lot of instruction given out at the muster points. Like I talked about, you had those, what happened. So for those who don't understand, you get notified to go to a detail, you report to a specific location, you get put on a roster. The rosters are, on an event like this, these rosters should be pre-printed with the post and the post description. And you used to get a piece of paper with your post description telling you what you're supposed to do with that post. And I don't. From what I'm hearing, that wasn't the case. That the rosters were being filled out willy nilly. That it wasn't as organized as details in the past, especially Manhattan South, Manhattan North, who deal with major details all the time. And you show up at these muster points, and the sergeant grabs 8 cops, put them on the roster. They're sergeants in charge of those, or lieutenants in charge of 3 sergeants, and at a minimum, depending on the manpower. And then you are supposed to brief your officers on what they're supposed to be doing on their post, what they're supposed to be looking out for, if you have any intelligence on anything that might be going on. Now, again, this is a celebratory event, right? This technically isn't a protest. This technically isn't, any kind of demonstration. So I question with the applicability of the protest settlement agreement and how it's policed, because although everything is a First Amendment activity, when you look at the actual definition of a First Amendment activity, let me pull that up real quick. I have that.
Well, I'm just going to jump in there because Jose Vega brings up a great point, and I was actually thinking the same thing, but he beat it to me on in the chat. He said we would do tabletops before every event to practice all the contingencies, and that's 100%. We would go down to the Jack Maple room. Everybody would sit around, which would include Secret Service, FDNY, EMS, even DEP, every agency, and we would sit out there and go over scenarios. It usually was done by the counterterrorism division, and they'd run by scenarios. I mean, I was out, MetLife or Shea Stadium when Jose Vega was running a tabletop exercise. I think it was for the U.S. Open, relative to just a radiation detection hit or something that went off. And I think at the one point it just turned out to be somebody that had a thallium stress test. But all good stuff, but that's what makes it. And what the best part of those things is, you see the faces, everybody, and what's gonna, what happens if something goes bad, who to go to. So a very important part of it as well, the tabletops. So thank you, Jose.
100%. So right out of the protest settlement agreement, the definition of a First Amendment activity or an FAA shall refer to any protest or demonstration at which individuals are expressing their rights under the First Amendment to the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 8 of the New York State Constitution. A protest and a counter-protest in the same general location shall be considered a single FAA for the purpose of this agreement. So I don't think that this celebration rises to fall under the protest settlement agreement. People may disagree. But, and again, when you think about people want to go out and they want to celebrate and they want to chant for their Knicks and everything else. They have the right to say what they want, do what they want under the First Amendment. But as far as a First Amendment activity under the protest settlement agreement, I don't think that this applies. Could be wrong. What are your thoughts with that analogy?
Well, I agree with you, but I think the wording can be twisted to allow that, that when you talk about shall refer to any protest or demonstration at which, and this is the point where I'm talking, at which individuals are expressing their rights under the First Amendment. So can it be twisted? Yeah. Do I believe it was? No, I don't believe this was any type of a protest or demonstration. This was a celebratory type of event. I would say the same thing. It's similar to a Times Square event. Okay, the dropping of the ball at Times Square. That's not a protest or demonstration, but you could construe that too as expressing their rights to go for New Year's Eve. But I don't think the reaction should not be the same. The reaction, because of the incidences that happen, it should not have to follow the that whole statutory thing with the First Amendment activity. They should be able to, that custody or the decree or whatever, they shouldn't have to follow that. They should be able to, deploy appropriately to stop the rioting. And that's what and the violence. That's not anything to do with a protest.
So I'd like, Jose, you're out there. I'd like to get your opinion on that part of it, because to Rob's point is exactly what I'm talking about. Is our deployment of the SRG is very limited when it comes to a First Amendment activity. Now, if we're not saying this is a First Amendment activity, I think that you could have brought out the SRG to the forefront a lot sooner, and in the plan had them out there. And I'm going to show, we're going to show videos. Like I said, we got a bunch of videos we're going to go through, and I'm going to try and keep them in order, right? Because I'm going to show you in these videos, we're going to show how the officers that were deployed from the Detective Bureau, other details, the precinct sector cops that are there for the night, all these 900 cops that were deployed or part of, because the SRG would be part of that, how they acted, how they reacted, and what I think, and and I'll get your opinion on it, Rob, of what, because people don't understand. We don't discuss this. We try to keep it organic, so we don't really discuss the videos and what our opinions are on the videos before the show, because we want to keep it organic for the show. But we're going to discuss from our perspective where we think the cops went right and wrong, and I think they went wrong a lot, and a lot of it is because of weak leadership, a lack of supervision, and a lack of executive oversight. I think that is the main reason that we had such problems. And again, piss poor planning, which includes, like we've always talked about with almost anything, with any deployment plan, right? A crime strategy plan, anything. We talk about it all the time. Inform the cops of what they're supposed to do, why they're where they are, and the reason that they're there, and what they should do to combat whatever the condition is. And they can be so much more effective, and they will be so much more effective, because the boots on the ground want to do that job. The boots on the ground want to go out there and do their job effectively. They want leadership to be proactive. They want leadership to be involved. And that's one of the main things that's lacking, is hands-on leadership that is supporting the troops. And one way to support the troops is to properly arm them with the right equipment and information and intel.
Yeah, I don't think there was a proper level of command, I will say. Each of these events, doesn't need to be, it shouldn't be run by a captain or anybody else. It should be run by somebody that can make a decision if, in fact, you want to go with the, the protester agreement, then have somebody that can actually call in SRG when necessary. So, and then, I would say like maybe 1-star chiefs at each of these particular locations. You can have the 2-star chief, but really at this point, because of the massiveness of this event, okay, not only in the borough of Manhattan, but in other boroughs, the chief of patrol should have been designated the incident commander, and should have been able to make any decisions immediately, and should have been on the ground, or at least in operations or whatever, ready to make the call. So I just think that it was piss poor planning to allow these events to get out of hand. Yeah, Madison Square was locked down. That's great, but you had a whole nother city to worry about, and I think they dropped the ball on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, it did. And Jose agrees with us that SRG should have been proactively deployed, because even if it's not a protest, it's still a crowd management issue. When it comes to protests, though, Jose, as you know, with the limitations of the protest settlement agreement, they can't be proactively deployed. They have to be deployed on the outskirts. There's the tiered system, right? The blue shirts have to be in there with community affairs and try to engage. And, we've seen time and time again where when even under the restrictions of the protest settlement agreement, that certain incident commanders, chiefs, one of which just received the Medal for Valor, has on multiple occasions had the opportunity, had the authority, the ability to articulate the need to move SRG in to prevent violence and further civil unrest, and hasn't done it because of the emasculation of the NYPD, as John and Eric say all the time. And everybody is afraid to make a decision. They're afraid to make the call and do the right thing because they're afraid they're going to be called out on the carpet, and they don't want to be the one to step up and take ownership and say, yes, that's right. I called them in because X, Y, and Z was occurring, and I needed to protect the citizens of New York. I needed to protect the protesters. I needed to protect the counter-protesters. I needed to protect my men and women in the NYPD by bringing in the properly trained and effective crowd control experts.
But here's the problem. If we're going to classify it as not being a protest, then there should be no problem pre-deploying SRG in the crowds or wherever they have to be so that they're ready available. So, I think what it is the department's so scared right now because of that protest agreement that they don't even want to put anybody with an SRG shirt anywhere close to anything because they're huh?
No, and their helmets and uniforms.
Yeah, I mean, they're easily identifiable. So they don't want to do that. So as soon as they see that, they're going to be like, "Oh, you're violating this." No, they're not. They are a deployable unit, okay, and they can be used for pre-deployment, and they can be used for that crowd management and that crowd control. And I think similar to what Jose Vega also speaks about is I think a lot of other members in the department, whether it's Detective Bureau, he's talked about homicide, but all these, no longer are they properly trained in crowd management like they were under Tommy Graham or under Louis Anamone. So that's the problem too. It kind of, they shied away from that and just gave it to SRG, and then the training diminished. And now all you have is SRG that's trained in that, and the rest of the department doesn't continue. And that's a learned behavior, right? You have to be repetitive with it because the day you leave Randall's Island from doing make a line or make a wedge, it's out of your head, right? You forget about it. So you have to keep it repetitive to understand it. So
even like Jose's been there through multiple, was in disorder control prior to the SRG through multiple commanding officers. And even when Tony Raganella got there and they started doing those borough-wide deployments and going out and taking the cops off of patrol for
the red letter drills.
Not the red letter drills was one thing. Those always happen, right?
Those sergeant never wanted to see
the red
that
letter drills that you got a heads up on, right? You're the duty captain. You're like, all right, you're gonna have a red letter drill tonight. And so you called up the desk officer, make sure the guys have their hats and bats, and make sure everybody's in order. So it kind of didn't really, wasn't a true surprise for those red letter drills. No, I'm talking about when they used to go out and they used to call the level 1s or 2s, and you'd meet at a certain location during patrol hours, and you take a call from each command, and they would do lines and wedges.
Oh yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
out in the field.
Right.
It was effective, because we talk about ongoing training, right? So everybody gets that disorder control training, or whatever you want to call it now, public order training, in the police academy. After the protest settlement agreement, the entire job had to go for that retraining at the police academy. The entire job had to go back. But again, now, like you said, they've done it again. They did it in the academy. Now, maybe that's 15 years ago. They did it a couple of times while on patrol, if they were working when one of these drills happened, where Jose and his team would come out. And, you know, I was the CO of task force, so I would be part of that too, you know? There's no ongoing training. Like we talk about with all the training, there's no ongoing training. It's muscle memory. And we're going to show videos of how it failed. And there's one specific video that I'm going to show that's just going to just totally prove the point of a lack of training, a lack of the cops and everybody else taking it serious and the seriousness of it and following direction. Because there's one sergeant that really tried to do the right thing and was totally ignored. Well, let's start talking about, you know, like here's SRG. So this is later on in the night, but here's SRG, and this is exactly what you're talking about. These are the guys that are lined up. They're wearing their helmets. They're not like the, you know, motorcycle, you know, riot helmets, the big heavy ones that the guys on patrol have, right? But the watch party goes bad, right? And what happened? So after the team's lost, fans spilled out of Bryant Park onto the neighboring streets, sparking fights, resulting in 21 arrests. The crowds flooded 42nd Street, jumping on cars and cabs and police vehicles. That's another thing we'll talk about. Hitting windshields with lightsabers and other objects. Some members of the crowd threw beer bottles at officers. 8 of those arrested were charged with offenses including assault on a police officer, assault, criminal possession of a weapon, menacing, resisting arrest, and OGA. 13 others were issued criminal court summonses. So let's take a look at, first of all, the beginning of the night when people were trying to go into and getting ready. This comes from Freedom News TV on X. This is everybody waiting and lining up to go into Bryant Park. Nice, calm, orderly, taking over one lane of the street, but that's going to happen, right? Because you got the crowd going in. But it wasn't, it doesn't seem like it was restricted. So I don't know how many people were actually in there. But then once it ends, again, there's too many videos to show of all the chaos and debauchery that was going on out in the streets. But here's just one of them. Not a cop in sight.
No. I mean, that's a location where SRG should have been pre-deployed and been ready to move in because, you know, as John, Eric, and Marlon had mentioned earlier today, you're not going to take independent action. Like 2 or 3 cops that are on that post, you're not running in there. But what you are doing is you're getting on your radio and you're calling for people. And you're gonna get, you know, a group in, and you're gonna go in and make arrests, right? Normally, what you do is you make a line or whatever. You march in. You have the rest team behind you. Open up the ranks, grab the individuals that you want to arrest, and pull them back in, and then cuff them or whatever. But there's just total anarchy. Again, that's fight. That's they're assaulting each other. I feel bad for the guys that are wearing the Spurs jerseys, you know, because you know, they basically just got assaulted for no reason. You know, they're walking down the street with a Spurs. I've been to adversarial stadiums with my team.
With your Rangers jersey on?
I went to the Tampa Bay Lightning game with my Rangers shirt on. Although down in Florida, there's a lot of Ranger fans down there because there's a lot of people from New York. But you know what? Just as the same as if somebody was wearing that in MSG at a Ranger game, I'm not going to go, you know, starting a fight with these people. That they did nothing. These are just fans, for crying out loud. and these people were accosted and assaulted, and their shirts were ripped off. Those jerseys are expensive, man. I had to beg my son Andrew and Aiden to buy me one for Christmas. So, but they're very expensive. So it was crazy. But yeah, that's where you want to have deployment. That's where you, like you had mentioned earlier, that's where you need to, the men and women that are on those posts need to know what to do if something happens. If it gets bad, it gets ugly, what are we going to do? To me, looking at that picture when they're fighting and stuff, nobody's in sight. I don't even know what's going on. Where are they? They're going to allow people to get, crazy and assaulted. So, but yeah. Housing for Life likes the Ranger jersey at the Lightning game. Yeah.
I'm gonna go inside and get my Islanders jersey, all right?
What's that?
I'll go inside and get my Islanders jersey.
Oh.
I almost wore it tonight because it was, it's orange and blue like the Knicks. So I went with this is as close to Knicks blue as I got.
Yeah.
I'm not a basketball fan. To be honest with you, Game 3 was the first full basketball game I've ever watched.
Yeah. I mean, I used to watch as
I'm
a
not
kid,
a basketball fan.
not recently, no. No.
But
the best part of basketball is the last quarter,
Yeah.
And then you see what happens. So
listen, it's been exciting.
Yeah, good games.
It's been exciting, and the change in leads and the Knicks getting off to a slow start every game and fighting their way back and right down to the wire on each game. So very interesting. But a couple of things that have been brought up, like by Tony Vega, and we've talked about it also, is the training, right? And part of the problem, and we're talking about proactively deploying the SRG, the Strategic Response Group, because they are the disorder police, right? They're the riot police, whatever you want to call them, the disorder, public order specialists. But again, proactively deploying them gives a presence of authority. And one of the things that I feel was lacking in this instance around Bryant Park was the police putting forth a presence of authority. And again, it's hard to blame the rank and file. They're not given the proper direction. They're not given the support. They're not given the leadership, being behind them. Everything that's going on with the legislature and CCRB, it's very hard to blame the cops. But in a situation like this, you have to remember your training. And again, it's muscle memory. And the training was really lacking. And one of the main things that you learn with public order is working in a team. Don't take independent actions because it's dangerous. You have to work together in a team. That's why you have the lines, the wedges. You have, used to have, remember the arrest team used to stand behind the line and they would open up, snatch somebody and bring them back in, that was acting the fool, whatever the case, and get them behind the line. It's all working in a team atmosphere and being orderly. But that also puts forth a presence that's going to quell a lot of these people, because these aren't the paid agitators that are coming in from around the country for these anti-ICE, pro-Palestinian demonstrations and protests that we've been seeing over the past year or so. These are just revelers. They're supposed to be out supporting their team. They're supposed to be celebrating the fact that the Knicks are here in the finals and they have a chance to win for the first time in decades, right? And so they're going to respond better to the authority of the police. If the police act in a professional manner and show the possibility of using force if necessary, right? Because that's what's lacking, right? When we were coming up, John talked about it. He mentioned it a couple of times, and I laughed about when the Yankees won, and you'd go out and you were driving around. And I remember going out in my car, and we're out on Highland Boulevard, and we're beeping the horn and waving flags and everything else. And like he said, one RMP shows up, throws their lights on, and says, "All right, guys, beat it, enough." And what did everybody do? Right? They scatter. They listened to the cops because they were afraid they were going to get pulled over. They were going to get summonses. They're going to get their car taken away, whatever the case may be, because the cops were being the police. Now, you don't see it as much.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see that too up and down. Asked where Mounted was. Now, Mounted has not been used in riot control for a long time because, but I don't know if it had anything to do with the protester agreement or whatever, but a long time ago, they were pulled off of that. And are they a necessary asset? 100%. They're great. Why? Because the horse is big, it's strong, it's heavy, and if it steps on your foot, you're going to know it. And people move back. So unfortunately, you saw people in Jersey at the detention facility, throwing bricks and lumber at the poor horses. So that was bad. But the other thing I just want to I agree with what Ausman Cisse from X says. Bryant Park? Why would Bryant Park have a watch party? I agree. Why did they strangle themselves with such a? If you go to Bryant Park, there's a couple means of egress, a couple ways to get in. I don't know whether or not they cordoned it off, but why specifically that area? They would have been more attuned to do something in Times Square, where they normally do the ball drop. They're familiar with that. They could have set up pens. They could have put it up on the old the big screen. Got additional TVs and put them up all along, and it would have been nice. But I just think that I agree. I agree with you that Cisse, I agree that I don't know why they would have it there. Whose idea was that? Why did they think they could police that area better than anywhere else? And it's right off the streets there, so it's very hard to. When a crowd does start to take over, there's multiple streets there around Bryant Park that can be taken over. So I don't know.
Let's take a look at another video. And this is what I'm talking about with the lack of training and cops just not following their training and getting involved with the crowd. So, I mean, you see it there. They're not organized. They're not following their training. They're not forming a line. They're not going to move. They're just pushing people back independently. And then you see that one tall redhead sergeant, stay together, stay together. Well, stay together is one thing, because then all they did was retreat back across the street. So you prove that you're not going to do anything. Like Jose said earlier, when you give these warnings, you give warnings ahead of time. This is what's going to happen. If you don't do this, you're going to be arrested. But then if you give the warnings, you got to follow through. And it has to be followed through. And again, I understand the cops don't want to make the collars because they're not going to be prosecuted. We've said it multiple times. We can't be concerned that DA Bragg is not going to prosecute these people for disorderly conduct. They're going to dismiss the summonses, their OGA, whatever the case may be. You have to do your job. You have to be concerned about what you're doing. And again, I don't believe that the protest settlement agreement comes into play here because this is celebratory, and also it's no longer peaceable protest. That's not peaceable when you're taking over the streets and you're doing those things. So you're not talking about again, I could be wrong, but I don't think it falls under the definition of a First Amendment activity because they're not protesting and they're not demonstrating. This is a celebratory gathering and they're now being disorderly. So I don't know that you need a captain's approval for the red light, green light offenses. Again, I could be wrong, but I don't believe you need that captain's approval for a red light, green light offense. And to just watch these guys go out there and push somebody back with their asp and then step back again. What are you accomplishing by that? Whereas if you have them form a line and now you're an opposing force that's moving forward, I believe you're going to get a much better response. There's no protective gear that these officers have. They're not even wearing their soft hats. They don't have protective gear. I don't know if it was readily available to them, which is something that you have to anticipate with a watch party and with things like this. I think it would have been even worse if they would have won because they would have been hyped up even more. But, I didn't see anybody with any protective gear. They don't have their sticks, PR-24s, whatever they have an ASP. And an ASP is not effective when you're doing disorder control. I don't believe we train them to use their ASP in disorder control.
Well, I think the problem is here that they're looking at the soft touch, and they don't have people. People should have already been in their helmets. They should have already been in their AKA riot helmets. They should have been on. I remember the first couple of times I worked the New Year's Eve detail as a cop. You wear that helmet. You first of all, you look like the Great Kazoo from the Flintstones. The second thing is your neck is killing you by the end of the day because if you wore it all night, But I would have said hats and bats. Listen, I don't even know if they issue PR-24s anymore. I think it's all asps. So
it's a straight stick.
Yeah.
They do get a straight baton, and then the asp they wear on their belt.
But they should have been brought to those, and they should have been done and worn those right away, because the impression then is that we're ready for business. Okay, with the soft approach there, with your hat off, and get back is ridiculous. It just allows them to, whether it's SRG with their helmets on, because when you saw SRG come down the street, move back. People were moving back. They knew the game was over. They knew that the cops had enough, and they were going to start pushing people away. If you have a bunch of cops just arbitrarily pushing people back, there's no coordination, and it's gonna lead to more chaos for the police officers and the rioters. So I think that the preparation should have been. I don't care what watch party you were at, right? Like Sleepy Joe says, mostly peaceful helmets, but you need to have those helmets on there to show that we mean business and we're not going to take any crap. And I guarantee you that would have called a lot of this stuff right off the bat, because they would have said, listen, these police officers don't they mean business. And again, have a plan, right? The sergeant pulled everybody back, but what was the plan? Just to retreat? Okay, right. Have the plan, regroup, and now we're going in. Who's the arrest team? Who's taking the collar? Start just like we do when we have a who's the designated shooter, right? We somebody has to be the guy. So who's taking the arrest? Who's not taking the arrest? So I just think it had to be. You set the tone from the beginning. Okay, you can always de-escalate and go down, but you have to present yourselves as ready for business, and it wasn't.
Yeah, and that's what Jose said, right? With that video, no helmets for protection, like I had said, right? Even a simple line being set up and advancing on the crowd would have shown competence.
Right.
Right. Like you said, you show that you mean business. We're not advocating to go out there and have a stick, have a PR-24, which is a side handle baton. For those who aren't familiar with what a PR-24 is, it's a side handle baton, and going in and bashing heads and knocking people over. But when you set up that line, you're showing force. Look at the difference. Look at this. They have a line set up. There's nobody in their face messing with them. They mean business, right? Without that, you have a guy walking down the street spraying the crowd. This line is not the appropriate line. You need a horizontal line, not a vertical line, going down the street. You know? You're not going to be as effective, and the crowd's not going to respond, because when the cops are chaotic, the crowd's going to feed off of that chaos, and it's just going to multiply.
The whole thing is just a lack of management, lack of leadership. That's all. You need people, somebody out there. You know, these poor two sergeants are trying to control the cops and push them back to what? I don't know. But you need somebody there. You need a plan. There's no plan. There's nobody there to institute the plan, and there's nobody to say, all right, let's execute the plan. Let's go. So,
and listen, those two sergeants are trying to protect their people, stay together, do this, do that. But when you have a crowd advancing on you, and the cops are taking independent action to push them back with their ass, the sergeant at that point is a supervisor. They need to be a leader. They need to go to their training, and they should have established a line, form a line here. And I'm going to show a video now. I'm going to jump ahead one video or two videos and show exactly what we're talking about. And here, a sergeant, it's in the very beginning, so pay attention, right? Well, before I even do that, Veronica Electron asked, where were the NYPD drones? It's a good question, right? Because the drones should have been deployed to get an overhead view of the crowd movement, and that intel should have been relayed to the boots on the ground. We talk about
aviation too.
Oh yeah, but don't get too low.
No, but they don't have to. They got great cameras.
No,
they could be
exactly.
They could be doing a downlink to the incident commander, because they had the capability on your phone. I had it. I could get aviation on my phone, my department phone, and also 1PP can also get it. So every executive, you can see what aviation sees, and then you can look for splinter groups. Okay, you can look for acts of violence, and then you can decide where you're going to train or deploy people to particular areas of violence and stuff. So yeah, drones are good, aviation, all of those things. I don't know. It was just like leadership. Where was leadership? I didn't see anybody out there. I didn't see anybody with a megaphone. I didn't see anybody else. I just saw, poor sergeants trying to protect their cops. That's what I saw.
Timmy had the night off.
He was inside watching the game.
We'll show that in a little while. He's out there tonight.
He's inside watching the game.
Yeah. One Eye Willie says, just remember, fellas, a lot of these guys are from the Detective Bureau and Patrol. They're not used to this chaos. Most of their work is investigations and do a little bit of mobile field force. They're not consistent like SRG. Nobody on the job is consistent like SRG. That is that spot on for One Eye Willie, because that's exactly what we're talking about. SRG are the experts. They're the public order experts. We've shown the video. We've shown the pictures. We're going to show a video of the difference between what the cops are doing, the detectives are doing, and then what SRG does. And the effectiveness of SRG and their appearance alone is effective, right? We talk about the force continuum. And what's the lowest level of force, right? Is just your appearance in uniform, and your appearance as an authority figure is the lowest form on the force continuum. So your presence will cause a reaction from the crowd. And when you are chaos, like I said, when you're being chaotic and you're all over the place and you're acting independently and not as a unit, the crowd is feeding off of that. And when you're just shoving people with your ass backwards, all you're doing is inciting them instead of acting as a unit, forming a line, and moving forward. And these people are going to move out of the way. They're not rioters, you know? These are just idiots that are getting caught up in the crowd mentality and getting caught up in the silliness of everything. But
You know what I'll say to One-Eyed Willie also, 100%, you know, also spot on from my perspective as well, because maybe, you know, the people that put people on posts should have decided, okay, I don't need a warm body over here. I need somebody that has the training and the expertise to do things. And maybe they could have been put on the outside of the area. They could have been put down at MSG in the frozen zone. Always use the people appropriate to their level of skill. And when you have SRG, you know what? They should have been out there. They should have been the front line. And here's the other thing. During the Summer of Love, you know, when they had the mobile field forces and the SRG was going around, once SRG took the front lead and pushed people out of the way or made arrests, the people behind them, which were mostly patrol, detective bureau, they followed. They knew what to do then because they observed the officers from SRG doing their work. So that's the other thing. But you know, proper placement of officers based on the level of training is equally important, because otherwise you're just going to have, like you said, chaos. When that would be the same as like putting me in the squad right now and saying, here's a case. I wouldn't even know where to start. So you know what? I totally agree. And then that should be looked at.
Yeah. We're an hour and 18 minutes in. We have over 400 people watching on all different platforms. A lot of people watching on the different X accounts. We always recommend jump on over to YouTube. You can get involved in the interactive chat. You see how interactive we are with the chat. And nobody else, if you're on X and you comment, nobody else is going to see your comments, and you can't see the other comments unless I post them up onto the screen. So we recommend you just jump over, find us Unfiltered Network, and jump in on the chat here on YouTube. And then don't forget, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. The network is growing exponentially. We're over 200, probably at 260,000 or close to it at this point, subscribers on the network. So that's all thanks to you, and we appreciate that. But let's take a look at what we're talking about, and then we'll look at a couple of different other videos. Well, I will let me show you one more video because it highlights again independent action, and I also question what the other cops were doing. But let's take a look at this one video where they're jumping up on an RMP, which is a police car. So I have a couple of problems with this. The first problem I have is acting independently. Well, actually, the first problem I have is these RMPs being parked on the main avenue. They should have had a side street blocked off for RMP parking to avoid. Haven't we learned from the riots of 2020? Whenever you have a big detail, that's another thing. If you're bringing an RMP, there should be a designated parking area and security for those RMPs so they don't get destroyed.
It's called a staging area. You need a staging area.
Not parked along the avenue like this. So when you have a crowd like this, they just start jumping on top of the RMPs. Now, this cop goes over, I don't know if it's his RMP or whatever the case may be, drags this guy down off the top. Where are these other guys? These guys he's working with are all standing there with their thumbs up their asses. How are they not going out there? If this guy's going out there, either you say, bro, let it go. We don't have enough people here to deal with this right now. Let's call for backup or whatever the case may be. Or you walk out there with them. how they let this guy just go out there on his own, pull this guy down, try and apprehend him. The guy wiggles out of his shirt, gets away, and then la-di-da. Okay. Again, emboldening the crowd to do more stupid shit. They're all laughing and joking like, look at the cop. And he just walks back. Now, I don't know what he's saying to these guys, but he just walks back, and these other cops are standing there like, doo-doo-doo, ba-ba. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, either you're going to say, hey, you're either going to help the cop. Listen, I would have jumped in at that point. That's how I would have been. All right, whatever you're going to do, we all got to do it together. And, just independent action. And the other cops just standing there, not helping out the fellow officer. I mean, they should have stepped up a little bit and helped him. So whether or not you believe it's right or not, you're one of your fellow officers is in the middle of a fight with somebody. You're going to go help them, right? So that you wouldn't just let that go on a normal time, a normal street. So when it's some sort of demonstration like this or a celebratory riot, then you have to take action, and you got to help your fellow officers out, no matter what. So
let's take a look at this next video, and this next video bothered me because this sergeant really tried to do the right thing, and let's just take a look. Just pay attention to the very beginning and to the sergeant.
This is my city!
Back up! Back up!
Now, there's so much in this video. But do you see what I was talking about? That sergeant is actually, he comes out and he stands there and says, form a line. And he's pointing to the ground and he's telling guys, go here and here. That's what you're supposed to do. And nobody responds. The lieutenant is basically just like blowing it off behind them. The detectives and cops are not responding to the sergeant and following his direction. And then they all start taking independent action. And as a group, instead of a line to move forward, they just start going and pushing forward. And then talk about lack of communication and situational awareness and knowing where you are. Did you notice where they pushed them into?
Towards the SRG guys, yeah.
They pushed him right into the line of SRG cops. So it's like, and they're 20 feet away from them, and they don't know that SRG is moving the crowd towards them. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. So what'd you think? What'd you think there? Because
I think that, like Marlon's saying, the white shirts, they're looking around clueless, like they didn't know what was going on. Thank God that sergeant was there and started to try to maintain some order, some setup, some discipline, what the cops should be doing. But I mean, it was just craziness. They didn't know what they were, I don't know. It was just it was sad to see. I mean, there's obviously they don't know what they're doing. There was no planning, and if these supervisors, whether lieutenant, they're probably captains. I don't think do lieutenants still wear white shirts? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, lieutenants or above, you know, you got to be a leader, and you don't do it by just standing there with deer in the headlights. So I think that, you know, so I don't know. You need more. There should have been supervision. And I love that the Knicks Spider-Man was out. That somebody said in the chat. And that was he was a leader too. He was pushing people back. So, but yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, One Eye Willie, we brought up that tweet earlier that he basically told people go out to the street anywhere they want to celebrate. It's ridiculous, you know. And what was Mamdani's response to all of this anyway? You know, speaking of Mamdani, is basically, you know, he's responding to Ben Stiller, who says being a Knicks fan doesn't mean being disrespectful to Spurs fans in any way. We get caught up during the game, but we got to show respect for our fellow humans. And Zohan Rondami says, couldn't agree more. We'll win this series on the court, even if the refs refuse to call a flagrant on Wembley, not by targeting, harassing, or attacking Spurs fan Knicks in 5. Now, listen, you're the mayor. You're a Knicks fan. Okay, that's great. But where is Mayor Zohan Rondami? And I've said this, unfortunately, every time there's an incident. Where is his stance? Where is his support for the men and women in the NYPD? Where is his outrage that 5 police officers were injured, that people were throwing things at the police, that people were climbing on police vehicles, that people were ripping bus signs out, and we're going to see what happened with that bus sign in the next video. Where, not one statement on it. This was the only statement I could find on his X. Because I thought maybe I missed it. So I went to his X and I scrolled back. This is the only thing I found.
Well, the other thing is, you know, the LRAD, right? The long range acoustic device. That's where was that, Jose Vega? Where right? Jose Vega was always had that, and would always give the warnings, and that's what you needed too, because it's a magnaphone. Actually, it projects a loud noise. I know it can. There was lawsuits relative to it. You know, with the loud piercing noise, people claimed ear damage and stuff. But it can be used as a warning device. It can be used as giving people directions on which way to go. You know, because you're supposed to give them a way out, right? You can't just box them in. You got to give them a way out. So, and as far as Mamdani, I mean, yeah, does he care? No. I mean, he thinks it's just okay for everybody to just aimlessly run around the city, do whatever they want, have his own businesses in the city, have to board themselves up to protect themselves because they know they're not going to be able to be protected by the police or anybody else if these crowds go crazy. So I don't know. He just doesn't care, you know. And, you know, Ben Stiller makes it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Ben Stiller at all, but he makes a point. There's no reason to attack, you know, fans from the Spurs that are there. But Mamdani just goes, agree, and then goes off on another tangent. So he didn't even give a shit that people were getting crawler just for walking down the street with another jersey on. So he just doesn't care.
No, and Detective Nolan, you know, I'll put your comments up when they're relative to the conversation. I know you're having a back and forth with some other people, but, you know, not for nothing, Ron, your expectation that Mamdani sees this as a problem is ridiculous. No, I'm sorry if I have an expectation that the leader of the city is going to support the law enforcement that are out there putting their lives on the line to keep people safe and secure. And that, you know, if that's ridiculous, then I'm ridiculous, you know? And What is my expectation? My expectations are very low at this point. It's unfortunate because we've seen, and we've talked about this on this show and every show on the network, time and time again. Every time there's an incident with the police, he's not come out, especially right away. If he does come out eventually, he doesn't come out with a strong statement for the police. And his only answer is about, don't attack the Spurs fans. How about don't attack the people in the blue shirts and the white shirts, the police. It's ridiculous. So and Jose's asking what's going to happen with the World Cup and the 250th anniversary, This is a preamble to that. They're celebratory. We're not handling these parties properly, and all Mamdani keeps talking about is watch party, watch party, watch parties. But he's not allowing us to police them properly. And I don't know.
Well, hopefully they learn their lesson from what they've done incorrectly on these watch parties. Hopefully that they've even done, something for tonight, because it is, like Marlon says, it is going to be a long summer. It's going to be very chaotic, and you have all these other events coming up, so whether they police it appropriately and put the people that can, put the right pegs in the round holes. I mean, that's what they got to do. So I'm hoping that they've learned, or they're listening and they hear it and they deploy appropriately, because who loses is the poor people that live in that area, live in that neighborhood. The poor people there were people that were driving that were literally surrounded. If they were in Florida, they'd be driven over, right? Because in Florida, Governor DeSantis signed something: if you in fear of your life and there's protesters around your car, you can actually, go ahead and get out of harm's way. If that was in New York, there would have been a couple of people ran over last night, because I saw some crazy, or the other night, I saw some crazy stuff going on. So I'm just hoping that they wake up, and they smell the coffee and realize it's a new morning, and they have another chance, because it could get very ugly very fast.
Absolutely. And speaking of ugly, I got one more video. We skipped ahead because of just where the conversation was going. And there's a lot to unwind out of, to unravel and to break down on this video also. So let's take a look at this, and let me know what you think about this.
Let's go. Let's go. All of them. Yo, somebody grab it away. Yo, what's up? What's up? Jump on the bus. Sidewalk. Get on the sidewalk.
That's crazy, right? With the sign, everything. I mean, that's you're talking about a felonious assault right there. And you know,
You
the
think it was
cops around
61
the
taken?
corner. Huh?
Think there was a 61 taken?
No, no way. That was a discount right there. Oh,
But right in the very beginning, boom. He's
yeah.
got a sign, and there's 4 cops standing right here. 4 cops
Right,
standing
right.
right here. And then behind them is where that other line of cops was.
Yeah.
And they did nothing. And it continues till 4 more people get hit with it, or 3 more people get hit with it. Then it backs up. And now they're brawling right in front of the cops. And they're like, there's a whole gaggle of cops just standing here. Just why are they not? Protest settlement inclusive. This doesn't fall under a red light offense. These are green light. This is a green light offense. This is a felony assault, right? So even if you want to throw the protest settlement agreement into the mix, which again in the beginning, like we talked about, we don't think that it applies. You have a felony assault occurring. You have enough cops there. You're not standing there. It's not 2 cops and you got a brawl going on. You got to wait for backup. I'll give you that. Wait for backup, right? Or now, where's that detective with his mace now, right? For those few people, because the rest of the crowd was back by the other stores. They had a whole open area that they were fighting in, and then these cops, and there's a look on the right between the right side between the 2 officers, the female officer and the officer with the beard, right? Who's I'm sure has a note. That's a white shirt. Doing nothing. They did nothing, stood there until this SRG white shirt, lieutenant or captain, this SRG officer, supervisor, came in and started to take action. So the first person to put hands on is the real police, the SRG. Came in, and then kind of like, oh, I guess we're going to have to come over here now because now the lieutenant got involved. And then here's the other lieutenant that was standing there doing nothing. And then another lieutenant comes in. And now everybody's like, all right, let's go break up the fight. Look at how many cops you have. Why couldn't they move in sooner? What were they waiting for? There's a felony assault in progress. A freaking bus sign is over the guy's head coming down that they saw. Blows my mind. Blows my mind. And so you have the SRG in the mix there. Now the other officers will come. And again, now you go to the end, and who's walking the guy out? Why is there a white shirt walking the guy out? Direct your officers to remove the guy.
Yeah, no, I don't understand why it takes a white shirt to do it, but I can somewhat understand that a lot of cops don't want to take the action now because of all the thing that's going on. You know, whether or not, you know, maybe they don't understand whether or not they were allowed to take action at that time or not with this whole friggin', you know, protester agreement and everything else. So, I mean, I agree with 92 Charlie. It's disgraceful to see this stuff because back in the old days, everybody would have jumped on and would have piled on a rabbit, and that guy would have been stopped right away. I mean, especially the fact that he was continually assaulting people with this sign that nobody, finally somebody, you know, the lieutenant or the captain finally steps in and says, all right, that's enough. We got to take this guy into custody. It shouldn't even gone that far. The first time that guy picked up the sign and was swinging at somebody, then the person should have been taken into custody, you know. And again, like, you know, Cigar Goes says, you know, no one wants to take those bag of shit collars and get jammed up. You know, that's true, you know, but somebody has to, right? Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to stop the guy, you know, whether or not you charge him with the felonious assault, or maybe you don't have any complaints or anything, you're charging with the discount or whatever, but you got to at least jump in and stop it, right? That's just chaos and bedlam. You know, God forbid that's your daughter or your son there, and this animal is hitting them over the head with a sign. You know, so I mean that definitely has to be stopped. Somebody has to step in. Why the white shirts have to get involved? Well, again, I always said they should be directing the enforcement, not doing the enforcement. So I could see if he was from SRG, get his SRG officers over there, go lock that, get that person, take him into custody. So those other lieutenants should have been, hey, get that guy into custody. That's it. He's going. And for whatever he's going for, he's going. But don't have to jump in and do it yourselves, you know. So, but it's crazy.
Leading from the front is one thing. You know, being out there with your troops is leading from the front. We talk about good supervisors, good leaders will lead from the front. That doesn't mean that you get hands-on and you have to be the one to do the job. And listen, I'm all for it. I've saw other videos where officers were heavily engaged and the white shirts jumped in, and I'm all for that because I've done it. When you need to get hands-on, you need to get hands-on because all hands-on are necessary, and directing people isn't effective or appropriate at the time. But when you have all those cops there, unless you're personally being assaulted, you shouldn't be getting hands-on. You should be directing the activities, monitoring what's going on, watching their backs, and that's how you lead and that's how you supervise.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody says that you can't get involved as a supervisor. There's times when you're going to have to, but for the most part, it's best for a supervisor not to get physically involved with that, because you're looking at the overall picture. If your police officers are concentrating on apprehending that individual and placing them in custody, you got to make sure that somebody has their backs, because if everybody's has their heads buried in and you have the blinders on, you're only looking at trying to cuff that guy. There's other people coming up behind you, and you don't know what they're going to do to you and everything else. So you have to look at that overall picture. So, you know, but thankfully the lieutenant jumped in and finally arrested that guy, because that was crazy.
Insane. And then the unions come out, you know, and they make statements on the incident. We talked about what the mayor didn't make a statement on, right? But the PBA and
Can you just look at? I'm sorry.
made,
Let me just interrupt. Look at 92 Charlie's comment at 1848. Right? He said, "My son worked Monday night, RDO overtime, but he said it was a shit show and there wasn't much to do unless they get the green light to move. Unfortunately, imagine that. That's bullshit. Okay, so like we've said." This is not a demonstration, and they're either they're reading into it or they're manipulating the agreement. Okay, that's like saying people start rioting and you know, and if they just start off the bat, there's no demonstration, but all of a sudden a bunch of kids start rioting. That's an arrest. Take immediate action. That's not a demonstration. Okay. So, I mean, the problem is like I've been saying, is that the NYPD has too much of a soft touch right now, and you gotta either set the tone by the equipment and the way you look, and your actions, and they're not doing anything to do that. So, I mean, you don't even have to make arrests. You know, just the perception, right? The omnipresence of a you know, a hats and bat, even the plastic, you know, shields, right? We used to have the plastic shields in the supervisor cars. So, I mean, anything, but you gotta play the part, and we're not. We're just oh, everything's gonna be fine and we're good, and then it turns into chaos. It is absurd, Marlon. So
yeah, imagine somebody getting killed right in front of you. And listen, that could have happened. That bus sign could have seriously injured somebody.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, and he wasn't just like using it as a shield to push people back. He had that thing full over his head and was wailing down on people, you know? And I'm sorry, Cigar Ghost, I can blame the cops for not engaging at that point. Other points, I agree. Proactive police work is difficult to expect in a lot of situations. But in this exact situation, I can blame those cops for not engaging. I can blame those cops, and I can say that they should have and did not need a captain or above or even a sergeant to tell them to engage when you are witnessing a felony assault in your presence. You move forward and you stop those threats and those assaults. So in this instance, listen, we are two of the most pro-cops, pro-police, pro-cop guys out there. We're going to defend cops when they're defendable. But we're going to call it out too. And again, I understand 92 Charlie, your kid was out there. They're telling you don't do anything unless you're told to do something. And I get that. If they're telling you to stand by while everybody jumps up and down and hoots and hollers, and even if they're jumping on a car, hooting and hollering, or they're climbing a lamppost and they're hooting and hollering, and the bosses are telling you stand back and let them hoot and holler. Okay, I get that because nobody's being harmed. But once that line is crossed and now you have somebody who's being assaulted with a weapon, you have to step in. You have to step in, and you don't need a boss to tell you to do it.
You're right, but the problem is and I'll say, okay, the officers should have jumped in, but I can understand where the cops have been so beaten down by all these rules and all these stipulations. And maybe when they get there, if you take the 8 people that are on your roster, if you're the sergeant, and you go over things and say, okay, this is what we need. If we're considering this a demonstration, this is what we need permission to do. But for other things, we don't. Okay, don't take independent action. We're going to work as a team, 1 and 8 or whatever we got to do, we do together. But these are the things that you can do. So I think it's also, some of it is education too, because a lot of times everybody says, oh, this is a protest agreement. You can't do any enforcement without the 2-star or whatever. But there's those caveats to that of what you can and the crimes that are specific to that. So what I'm saying is you need to be able to, as a good supervisor, give that instruction to the officers. If the department wants to put it out before anybody that's going to go to the freaking detail, they all have the smartphones. Send them a thing. Send them an informational. Okay, this is what you're allowed to do, and this is what you can't do. And if this is the independent action, this is what we want you to do. Okay, then you understand it. But the problem is the word doesn't get down to the boots on the ground. And everybody, in my opinion, I would have probably done the same thing. I would have stood there. I'm confused now. Do I go? Do I don't go? So I mean, yeah, you would think we would be able to do it, but I'm just saying, you know what? As management, if you see this as management, give instructions, let them understand. Like you talked about earlier, right? That packet, right? I remember going on details, and even for emergency service unit, Intel would give us a beautiful packet of everybody that in the area that may be wanted, that maybe had committed a homicide or an assault that's still out there, to look for when you're on a detail, because you could be panning the crew, the counter sniper team could be panning the crowd and all of a sudden pick somebody out. So without that information, without those photos, you wouldn't even have known. So with all these smartphones, I think we need to, let's give instructions. Let's give things that are important. All right. Not just the notifications that you got the detail tomorrow.
And those phones can also geolocate. You can send a message to people within a
mass messaging, right?
A mass message just into a location. You could on a map, you could pick a geolocation and get cops in the area of Madison Square Garden and Bryant Park, and they're the only ones that can get that message. So you can direct those messages even at the muster points. You can put a message out, geolocate it to that area, and send it to those officers, because you have officers from all over. So, I mean, yeah, they all get scanned in, right? They all get scanned in. They're in the computer. So you do have a listing of all the members of the service that are at these details. And you could theoretically send a message that way, but it's easier to just geolocate it. And hey, listen, if some cops in the 13th precinct or the 10th precinct get the message, so what? So be it. It's another message in their inbox, you know? But the important thing is that the people there get it. And, you know, but listen, I am 100% behind the fact that cops are confused, cops are getting mixed messages, that the cops are not being trained properly, that they're not being informed properly. And that's a management issue. That's an executive issue from the top down, 100%. And that being said, when there's a felony assault in front of you, I don't care what the instructions were. I don't care if you were told not to engage. I don't care if you were told to let them party and do their thing. Once you have a felony assault occurring in front of you, you have to step up. You have to step forward. You have to.
Listen, I remember, I heard it myself at a West Indian Day parade, right? Celebratory gunfire. There will be incidences when somebody comes out on their stoop and shoots a gun up in the air, and you're not to take police action. And we all looked at each other. We were from the Bronx, and it was like, "Are you freaking kidding me? You're going to tell me I'm not taking action?" But that was the instruction that was given. So I mean, the stupidness of management in the NYPD has historically gone on for, at least in my opinion, for 32 years since I was on the job. So longer now, 35. So it just needs to be refined, and it needs to be corrected, because that's what's going to help the cops. That's what's going to help them. So it's just sad that it still continues to this day, where officers don't know if they should or they shouldn't,
Right. And to that point, what New York City 26 is saying, had the guy seriously injured someone with that bus shield, those cops would have been liable for a lawsuit in their individual capacity, and I doubt the city would have represented them. Now, to throw out an Eric Dim word, there's the dichotomy, right? Where if you go in and you get hands-on, you're going to be criticized for being hands-on and, taking that guy into custody, and police work doesn't look pretty, and you have to use necessary force to take them into custody. You're going to get criticized for that. Then if you don't do that and someone gets seriously injured, they're going to say you were negligent because you stood there and allowed it to happen.
Yeah, well, if you look at Letitia James, right, it's an omission. It's an omission. If somebody, when you do something, it's an omission. So yeah, there's a lot of times where right now it's very hard to be a police officer, because there's so many internal and external factors. So, and I agree with One Eye Willie, and we've said it numerous times. That training that you speak about, One Eye Willie, is all it is a checkpoint for a liability to put on you and take the onus off the NYPD. Oh, you were shown the video, you took the test, you should have known better, so we're not going to indemnify you, or you're liable, or you're at fault. That's all it is. That's a CYA, and it is bullshit. It should not be done. I totally disagree. I can't tell you how many times you'd have to go around and tell the cops, just watch the damn video and sign off and answer the questions, because the questions were all the same. That's a bunch of bullshit too, because every supervisor that says that, you're pushing these poor cops in the wrong direction. And I'm a big advocate of, and ESU did it all the time, when you went down to the TAC house and you ran around the tactics and you learned that, doing it, not watching a video. I learned by any mistakes that I made with things that I learned from training when I did it, when I made the mistake in training. So that's where you want to learn. I mean, that's what needs to be done. That hands-on type of training. That's where you're gonna know. That's why, why in the police academy did everybody like the EVOC course, right? The emergency vehicle, because that was fun. You were down there, you were doing it, and you were driving. And you know what? When you ran over 10, I remember one time you come up to the one point and he says left, right. And he says, he messed with me. He's like, at the last minute, he's like, well, right. and I went left, and you knock over every cone, you know, and it's like, oh well. But that's how you learn, you know.
Yeah. So I'm a little behind in the chat. I see that Detective Nolan's got to go. And he says, "Have a good night." So I just want, if he's going to be gone, just thank you for the super chat before you go. We'll say it. We'll bring it again for Ron getting his voice back. For those who don't know, I was sick last week. So I just want to. I see that you're leaving, so I'll give you your shout out for your super chat. Thank you for the super chat. We really appreciate your contribution to the show. Have a good night, brother. Enjoy the game if you're going to watch it. I know you're not a big fan of watching it either. So, but yeah, it's very frustrating for us because of where we came from and the way we came up in the police department. And what we see today is very frustrating. It's hard for me to come up to see this stuff and just not want to just shake people and say, just why aren't you doing your job? And again, then I stop myself and I understand what they're up against. But I'm just sorry. I'm not going to back off of it. You know, there's a comment in here, and I don't. I got it up right. So 9-2 Charlie, of course, felony assault, yes. But if Scales pushing and grappling, who gives a shit? And again, you're told to be hands off, and it's just hooting and hollering and a little pushing and shoving. I agree. Don't go into the crowd. Nobody's being hurt. There's no threat. There's no violence. There's nobody that's in imminent danger of a serious physical injury. But when you're slamming that freaking bus stop sign over somebody's head, you got to move in. You got to give us the sergeants there, the lieutenants there, give direction. Guys, let's go. Move in and take care of business. And what makes it a little even more frustrating is the fact that it wasn't like that first video we showed in the middle of Bryant Park. The cops couldn't get there if they wanted to. They would really have to form a wedge and really break their way into that crowd to get to that first fight. That I get, 100%. These people had their own boxing ring open. You know, it wasn't a crowd. The only people in that open area were those engaged in the fight. I'm sorry. They had to move in. They had to do it.
We used to call it mopery in the third degree.
Yeah.
You know, so. But yeah, if they had they, you know, Bryant Park, that would take SRG and those guys, you know, going in there and pushing people out of that park. And right there, yeah, I mean, it was open, it was accessible. So, but yeah, no, it's craziness. No.
All right, so let's just real quick. We'll talk about this, and then we'll bang out the next one. PBA comes out and says last night was another shameful display of individuals who are more interested in brawling with each other, ripping up street signs, hurling objects at cops, than supporting their team. We know New Yorkers are passionate about the NBA Finals, but police officers shouldn't have to enjoy a barrage of mayhem after every single game. Our elected leaders need to send stronger messages and make crystal clear that this behavior won't be tolerated. And then the DEA comes out with a very similar message. The assaults of an NYPD detective during the lawless behavior surrounding the NBA Finals is outrageous and unacceptable. No detective or any officer should be attacked for doing their job and keeping New Yorkers safe. And New Yorkers should not tolerate the destruction of public property. This violent behavior cannot be excused as celebration or anything else. It is criminal conduct, plain and simple. The DEA calls on elected officials to unequivocally condemn this violence and on prosecutors to ensure those responsible are held fully accountable. Our detectives will continue protecting the city. The justice system must do its part to protect them. DEA President Scott Monroe. What's missing from those messages, Rob?
I don't know. I can say that, you know, you could blame the DA, but the DA is not always going to do anything. The mayor is missing from that message, right? That the mayor and
he's an elected official.
And Jessica Tisch. I mean, where's the PC? Here's the thing, though, that what I would be saying to the rank and file is bring your helmets, bring everything, because and wear them. If I can remember correctly, the patrol guy had a caveat in there that if you felt you were in danger, there was a certain restriction on when you could put the helmet on. But there was one caveat in there that if you were in fear or you were injuries, susceptible to an injury, you could put that hat on. I would have been wearing that helmet. You know what? And that's what they should be saying. The PBA should be saying, listen, these are not peaceful anymore. So let's go hats and bats. Let's go everybody in. We got to protect our officers. This is what we want to do. So, but yeah, is the police commissioner, I don't know. The PBA and DEA, let's not play politics. Let's call it was. Where's the police commissioner's stance on this? And what is she doing and the rank and file doing to protect the members the next time? Like tonight, what did they bring? Did they bring the hats and bats? At these other watch parties, I'm probably not. Is SRG in the front? Why isn't SRG up in the front? Okay. Let's get some supervisors up there and then everybody behind them. So, let's go. So.
Yep. So, all right. One final note on this coming into tonight's game. The NYPD put out a video. We talk about Chief Timmy Boudet often. We both know Timmy. I came up through the ranks with Timmy, got promoted. Sergeant, Lieutenant, Captain, got on the job with Timmy. Good guy. He's out there. He's out there with that megaphone all the time at every freaking protest. I mean, it's got to drive him crazy. So I think that the NYPD puts out a tweet. What Chief Boudet said, "Let's go Knicks," and puts out a video. Let's take a look.
New York Knicks, it's time to bring the championship home to the greatest city in the world, New York. Let's go Knicks! Go New York, go New York, go!
I know you're not a fan of those types of videos.
No, not at all. No, I think to me, listen, Timmy was my ICO in the 2-3 when I was the XO in the 2-3. I liked him. The videos to me, I don't know. I don't like them at all. All I say is be a police officer, do your job, what you normally do, walk around with the megaphone, you can talk to people, but when you start, I don't know, posting videos like that, and I'm not saying it's him, but, because the NYPD obviously probably asked him to do it. So yeah. I just think it diminishes the importance of police officers. And I know people are saying, oh, it's to dehumanize, to humanize the police officers and make the citizens see that their police officers okay. And I say, yeah, that's all well and good till there's a controversial shooting or somebody pushes somebody to the ground and then nobody gives a fuck about you anymore anyway. What you did, if you jumped rope, played basketball, anything else, it's gonna be bullshit because they're not gonna give it. That bond that you think you made is broken immediately. The first time you pulled somebody over and said, hey, aren't you the guy that did the Knicks? Yeah, I'm a big Knicks fan. Okay, let me have your registration. You were speeding. Oh, you're a scumbag. What the hell, man? And it diminishes immediately. So I don't know. That's why I'm not a fan of that. I think that police officers should stand tall. Man, female police officers stand tall. Make sure you're squared away with the uniform and present a professional image. That's all. So I got my one spot on. That's all.
Marlon gave me one earlier, but I didn't mention it.
All right. Okay. Yeah, like Veronica's Charlie on the Parkway, right? That was John loved that, but that was
John knows him. John used to work on him. That's why.
Yeah, I don't know. He did that on his own, but I'm sorry. I'm totally against it. But
well, he did it on his own. Maybe he came up with it, but his CO had to approve it because it's under his CO's.
Okay. I wouldn't
account.
I wouldn't have done it, but
CO is the one. The
Yeah.
CO is the one that is allowing it to be posted either by them or by the public information officer. That's designated to have access to the account. I don't know. I'm not as opposed to it as you are. Some of them I think are ridiculous. I think that one's just funny, because he's well known for his megaphone. We even joke around about him and his megaphone. Being out there, it's always in his hand. It's always. He always uses it. He's never losing his voice because he's speaking into the megaphone. He's never yelling at anybody.
I'm not blaming him. Believe me.
So no. And again, I don't know if it was his idea. If it wasn't his idea, Mike Freed is saying that there's a million videos. I did see a bunch of videos of him in a very cordial manner, engaging with fans on TikTok.
And that's what he should be doing. That's what I agree.
He's in so many videos at the protest, doing his job, like you're saying, being out there, giving direction. Let's go, people. We got to move on, move down, giving warnings. Come on, get down off of that. Get down from on top. Earlier when the Knicks won a game, I don't know if they clinched or they won a game in the playoffs prior to the finals, and people were climbing up on top of the train entrance. He's like, if you don't get down, you're going to be arrested. Let's go, get down. Giving them warnings. So he's well known on TikTok and things like that. Not as a TikTok cop, because just that everybody videotapes him doing it. Because he's a big, tall, white guy, and he's always out there with the megaphone. Everywhere you see him, he's got the megaphone. I'm not opposed to some playful banter, some playful community-oriented, whatever you want to call them, videos. I've done them myself, as you know. I was the sixth CO in the program to go on TikTok. You had to go through training. You were told what you should do, what you shouldn't do. TikTok didn't have videos back then. You had these 7-second videos from another app. I'm losing it for a second, but they did these 7-second videos. They actually gave that to me because I had a lot of details in Flushing Meadow Park. So we used to post up a lot of events going on in Flushing Meadow, Corona Park. So I'm not as opposed as you are. I understand your point. I respect your point 100%. I'm not as opposed to it. I don't agree with all of them. I don't agree with the TikTok videos of the cops doing the dances and doing all those things like that, where they're taking multiple takes and then they're doing their editing, and so they're not doing their job. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a little more, community engagement and things like that. So, but I thought that was funny when I saw it, and it's funny that you sent it to me just before the show to bring on to the show, and I had already loaded it up.
Well, this is what I'll say. My last statement with this. Okay, what I perceive were riots, fighting, assaults, somebody getting hit in the head with a sign, and all the NYPD cares about is getting clicks on their Instagram and put Timmy up there. So you know what? Maybe they should have been sending some other messages out other than "Let's go Knicks." Okay, how about let's safely get to and from Madison Square Garden and make sure that everybody has a great night. But no, let's get the clicks. So screw them. Sorry.
Hey, listen, again, it is what it is. Some people like it, some people don't like it. And I know I agree with you. I agree with you 100% that the messaging coming out of 1PP and the NYPD's official account shouldn't be Timmy Boudet saying, "Let's go Knicks." That could be a part. That could be something that they put out just before the game.
Or at the end of a statement. Yeah.
Right. But the messaging should absolutely be to the public that the behavior from the other day is not acceptable, will not be accepted, and consequences are that you will be arrested if you're acting and you don't follow police direction. 100%. That should be the messaging going into tonight's game, without a doubt. Agree with you on that, 100%. What are you smiling at? Who's comment?
No, Mike Freed. That segment was sponsored by Rob's Rant.
Well, Angry Rob didn't come out, but I know I already knew your position on it because we've discussed it in the past.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was funny too that, like I said, I already put that in the deck for tonight, and
yeah.
And then I checked. You sent me the message just before the show went on. I'm like, it's already in there. I saw it. All right. Anything else on this? We're already 2 hours, 11 minutes in. A lot to talk about. I think we got a lot of good points across. Great interaction with the crowd. With the crowd. Listen to me. With the audience. And we appreciate your input. We appreciate your opinions. Whether you agree with myself or Rob or don't agree, that's fine. We don't have a problem with it. So listen, we hope anybody. Our message to anybody going out, and I'm sure we'll say it again at the end. Anybody that's out there tonight, you're already out there. It's 7:17. The game goes on in a little over an hour, right? Is it an 8:30 tip off again? I think so, right?
8:30, right? The game, yeah.
Usually, right? So listen, keep your head on a swivel. Follow the instructions, follow your training. But if you gotta go hands-on and you gotta take care of business, you take care of business. And you do what you have to do to protect yourself, protect your fellow officers, and protect the good people that are out there. That's what I'll say closing out that segment.
Yeah, I agree. All
right. So let's talk about something else that came out in the paper yesterday. So there was an NYPD sergeant was indicted for stealing over $132,000 in overtime pay. So as alleged, Sergeant Raina Rampool stole approximately $132,000 in pay from the NYPD while she worked as a sergeant in leadership position. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg said city employees who fraudulently drain the city coffers will be held accountable. Let's remember that sentence right there. Alvin Bragg states city employees who fraudulently drain the city's coffers will be held accountable. She was assigned as the CO of the photograph unit, right? She supposedly put in for time that she wasn't at work, as well as overtime. So she was arrested, indicted on grand larceny, falsifying documents, and charges like that. So I'm missing another article I wanted to put up. Go ahead, Rob. What do you think right away on that, Rob? Just one more article I wanted to put up. Sorry.
Well, what I see is two different boroughs, two different district attorneys, right? So I look at somebody, a deputy chief that allegedly had a clerical issue and didn't submit 28s when he was not working, okay, and took a $30,000 hit or whatever hit, okay. But the district attorney there, now what's 30,000 between 60,000, 64,000, still grand larceny, right? No matter what, it's over $1,000. So you're talking about a district attorney in Brooklyn who was probably conferred with and decided, I'm not going to prosecute, allow this to be done administratively. Then you go to a district attorney in Manhattan who's also anti-police, says, oh, this much money? No, we're going to criminally prosecute this person. Now, I understand that this female sergeant may have also had a past. I believe she had been arrested for, I think, petty larceny. So I don't know if she had some other problems, but, seriously, there's the tale of two different cities right here, and it shouldn't be, right? If you're going to stay consistent, we need to stay consistent within the city, not in specific boroughs or wherever you are, because when there's a problem with that, when you start getting money, you start taking money or taking hours of overtime that you didn't work, or you weren't at work and you were getting paid for it, then let's stay consistent. Okay. But to me, there's two different stories right here. So
I agree with you 100%. So you have this sergeant who stole 122,000 allegedly, in 132,000 in time and overtime. You have a lieutenant who was arrested and convicted of stealing $64,000 in overtime, and he was arrested and convicted. So if the NYPD is pushing forward in their investigations and speaking to the district attorney's office, to the integrity district attorneys, right? Because any criminal case has to go for a conferral with the integrity DA. And if you're going to look to press charges, again, you have to be consistent. So this lieutenant gets arrested, convicted, 64,000. She's now 132,000. But Richie Taylor, an NYPD chief, all he does is get transferred, doesn't get demoted, doesn't get terminated, doesn't get charged, doesn't get indicted, and has to pay back $20,000 for overtime that he didn't perform, as well as time that he put on his timesheet as working when he didn't work. And we had a show about this just 3 weeks ago with Richie Taylor.
Yep.
And we brought up the lieutenant's arrest and how it's not a fair playing field, and white shirt immunity, whatever you want to call it. And now here we go again with another case, and we don't have the same veracity for prosecution from the police department.
now, did you see Marlon's comment? That's hilarious. It says a tailor of two cities. That's great, Marlon. But yeah, I come on, you can't have, especially when you talk about, okay, as a sergeant, and you're talking about a deputy chief, and to me, there's obviously looks like there's favoritism, right? That somebody else is getting the soft little pat on the back, and the other one's getting collared. I mean, this is crazy. So I just think that you need to stay consistent. If I know that I've seen it a few times where people have been accused of stealing, time or whatever, and there's a conferral. And sometimes if it's like, if you have a good integrity control officer or a good squad sergeant, they catch it right away. They say, hey, you submitted this overtime slip, you weren't here or whatever. And then it's only would be consistent with a misdemeanor, right? But to allow this amount of time to go on, where it was done so many months that they've been submitting and be at home or not submitting or whatever the case may be, it's gone to past the point of grand larceny. Let's stay consistent. That's a felony. I don't know. I don't understand why we're not saying consistent. Now, could there be favoritism because that individual might know people in the Brooklyn DA's office? Absolutely. Could it be somebody else in Manhattan that's consistent and knows Alvin Bragg? Absolutely. But at least the department in itself should stay consistent with it. All right. And if they're going to terminate somebody, or they're going to, make them pay back and not push it for the arrest, then do it for everybody. Just don't do it. And it has all the lookings of a white shirt immunity. It's sad to say, but that's what, to me, it is. Okay. Because of a position, because of the rank, that person's afforded the opportunity when a sergeant is not. So to me, it's not fair at all. Not fair at all. It's not consistent. And that's what people want.
And again, where does this come from? Is this coming from the DA's office declining to prosecute, using prosecutorial discretion because they feel that they're not going to be able to get a conviction because the evidence wasn't strong enough? If the evidence wasn't strong enough, why wasn't the case built better by the NYPD if you're talking to a point where he paid back that much money? So did the job did the NYPD not push for prosecution on the chief, but yet for the sergeant and the lieutenant they did? Questions we don't have answers to,
No.
but legitimate questions still. And
Yeah.
again, we're not sticking up for the sergeant. We're not saying it was the right thing to do, and we're not calling, we're not calling for an arrest of Chief Taylor. Like, we don't know all the ins and outs of the cases, and we're not on here saying every cop should be locked up for everything. Every case has to be looked at independently. But when you look at cases, right, and you look at the punishment of cases, you have to look at similar cases and the outcome of similar cases so that you are giving appropriate punishment so that there's fair and equitable distribution of punishment across the board. And your rank should not play into it in a favorable manner. As a matter of fact, your rank plays in a negative way because it's a mitigating factor in the disciplinary matrix that you are a supervisor, thereby you should know better.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Obviously, I mean, it just needs to be consistent and consistent along that, whether or not the referral, the DA wants to prosecute or not. I mean, that's like you said, that the prosecutorial, that's their procedures or whatever, how they want to handle it. But internally in the department, something should be done that, okay, if this is the case, then all right, let's go forward. But if it was just, if you're going to claim it's a clerical error, I mean, maybe she can claim it's a clerical error too. I mean, we don't know. But yeah, there are a lot of variables. There are a lot of things that we don't know. But all we look is for consistency and accountability. And to me, there's they're making her accountable, but they're making other people not accountable, and that's not fair to the person who would be in charge and should be really reviewing. I used to sign the back of overtime slips all the time as the XO of SOD. I would see them all the time, and you know what? I would you have to look at the front and look at the back, right, and make sure the payroll entered it, make sure it's signed, and there was errors that I found. So I remember in Jin Yi. Remember Jin Yi? Somebody had put like 25 hours of overtime, and he says, "How do you work more overtime and then there is hours in the day?" It was like, so there's always the stories, but let's be transparent and let's be consistent. So this has all the signs of neither.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else on this?
No.
So just one more thing. I know it wasn't something that we had talked about before putting up on the show, but I just want to get your opinion on this.
I think you're a very handsome man. Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you. So, we did a show on the city getting lucky when the ISIS-inspired bombers failed at their attempt at Gracie Mansion. And we went through all the actions of the chief, Sergeant Navarro, and the other officers, and the fact that police officer Grant Polgarin wasn't getting his due, possibly because of open CCRBs, because he was an active police officer. And then he wound up getting a detail, so he was getting rewarded somewhat, but he still didn't get promoted. So we have an annual medal day where the big medals, the big medals, the Medal of Honor, the Combat Cross, the Medal for Valor, the unit citations that go out to different commands are given out. And the chief and the sergeant and Grant Polgarin, police officer Grant Polgarin, was 3. I read in the paper that there were 5 that received it. I apologize for not knowing the name of the other 2. If there are 2 others that did receive it, possibly the 2 community affairs officers that apprehended the second individual might be the ones. I don't know for sure, but They got the Medal for Valor, and the narrative continues that they prevented this ISIS attack, which isn't the case. We got lucky, and they apprehended them for being lucky. You know, you talked about the explosive devices, and you know how sensitive they could be, and you know it could have knocked itself out when it hit the ground, or just poorly put together. But they were absolutely viable devices. They were detonated at the range. There was a danger, but what are your feelings and thoughts on all of them getting a Medal of Valor, which is the third highest medal and honor that an officer in the NYPD could get for that incident?
Yeah, so I love what 92 Charlie says. You know, it's an empty suit and Chief did nothing. And then Housing for Life, I love this one. It says, is that a gold medal for hurdling, jumping over the fence? But to me, it diminishes that particular medal. Okay, and if I can remember correctly, a commendation is for a grave risk to personal safety or life. I forget what it specifically said, but they got lucky. Do they deserve that medal? I don't believe so. I think it diminishes it. I've seen the medal. I've been on the medal committee where you review things and you determine whether or not that it goes before the second board or up above you. So I've seen some poorly written ones and they get good medals or whatever. I've seen some embellished ones or whatever. That's why they always told you don't write anything up till after the trial, right? Because it's all Rosario and it could be brought up at trial. So I'm sorry, I think it diminishes the medal for the action that I observed him do. That IED was thrown at him and he jumped over a fence. And Officer Plagarno, I think his name is, he deserves it. He deserves it because he stopped that individual, not knowing. I mean, I don't know. Maybe did he see the IEDs being thrown? I don't know. But again, he could have had a suicide vest on. He could have had anything else, and he took him down, full force. The sergeant and the chief. I'm sorry. I think it just diminishes the medal. And I think there are other appropriate medals for that. If you want to give them a commendation, give them a commendation. But I'm sorry, other guys I've known that have been stabbed, shot at, and not engaged in the combat cross, but have been shot at or whatever. Okay, then you get that. But this, I'm sorry, I just think that it diminishes it. I just think it's another. I think he's being honored by the ICP, the chiefs of police and stuff. So I don't know. It just diminishes the fact of all the other officers that actually put themselves in a serious harm's way. Because if I can remember correctly, that medal is for like a real, serious, could either be a serious injury,
grave risk of imminent death.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm sorry. Jumping over, an IED that they I don't even know if they knew it was an IED. So I'm sorry.
And even listen, there wasn't a grave risk of imminent death because it was not a viable device. They didn't extinguish the device. They didn't throw a bucket of water on it and somehow put the fuse out. Then I could say, if you could say that they stopped that bomb from going off, they deserve it, or a higher medal, even the Medal of Honor, if that was the case, because they could have saved how many lives if that was the case. But the fact that they apprehended somebody that threw a device that luckily didn't go off, like you said, you give them a commendation. The sergeant got promoted to special assignment.
All right.
Grant Polgarin should have gotten promoted to detective specialist because we've seen it happen to so much less. Forget about his CCRBs. His action deserved that recognition. I agree with you. It diminishes it. I don't see that it fits into the definition. And I grabbed this last minute, so I didn't go into the patrol guide and pull up the actual definitions for each medal. But I believe this is grave risk of imminent death for the Medal of Valor. That's why guys that get shot at and don't get shot and don't return fire, that's the medal that they get.
Right.
Right? Because they were in grave, imminent risk of death or grave injury or death because they were shot at. Again, if they dumped water on the bomb and you're going to say that put the bomb out, okay, I'll give you that now. Now I'll give you that. But they apprehended somebody who threw a dud. That's what it comes down to.
Oh, well,
They were incompetent. Thank God they were incompetent ISIS-inspired bombers. Because it was their incompetence that saved lives that day. Not the chief jumping the barrier and the sergeant sidestepping the bomb and Graham Polgarin tackling the guy. None of that saved lives that day. They apprehended someone who may have caused harm later on because he could have, failed at this attempt and then gotten another one. So there are honors, like you said. I would have had no problem with the sergeant getting the money, the cop getting detective shield, even though the sergeant, all right, but the chief is saying that the sergeant is the one that first observed the ISIS-inspired terrorist lighting the bomb and brought it to his attention. So he was involved. They did go towards the danger. I'll give them that. But the fact that there wasn't an imminent risk of death because the bomb did not detonate, and for whatever reason, I agree with you that this is like I agree with 92 Charlie and other people and Danny Hulk. Yeah, it is Vine. That's what it was in the Twitter back in the day. But I agree with people in the chat that are also saying that it's a political stage that they keep propping up, and and McLovin is saying, nobody's taking away from Edwards taking police action, but it's getting boring now. Well, I don't know about boring, but guys chase the perp with actual guns and get an EPD or meritorious. Yeah, that's a true statement right there. That's a true statement right there. So,
yeah, well,
I agree with that.
Somebody pulls a air pistol on you and you shoot them, you don't get the combat cross, right? So, I mean, let's be real.
You hope you don't get indicted.
Exactly. So, well, you know what the problem is now every time he goes somewhere or he's introduced or whatever, and up on the stage, it's
2026 Medal of Honor.
Yeah,
recipient.
that's the problem.
Medal for Valor. Sorry, Medal for Valor.
Medal for Valor. Yeah. Oh,
absolutely.
It is nonsense. No.
Anything else? We'll go to Ask the Executive.
Good. Yes, sir.
All right. 2 hours and 34 minutes into it. Let's go on to our final segment, Ask an Executive, where Ron and Rob answer questions from the chat. This is where you get an opportunity that a lot of times you don't have to ask an former NYPD deputy chief and former NYPD inspector questions either on topic or off topic, and we're willing to answer your questions. Also, you can reach out to us offline, because a lot of people, if you're active, don't want to identify themselves. You can email us at theexecutiveperspective@gmail.com, or you can reach out and you can DM us on X at execperspective, and we will answer your questions and bring that question up on the show the following week if we feel it's appropriate, and we will absolutely keep your identity confidential. So we have over 500 people that are still watching now. So
I think Mikey G asked the question. I think he asked it earlier too. I'm not really sure of the answer on that one. I didn't read it thoroughly as I know you and Eric have.
yeah, I mean, they don't want you wearing the traditional disorder control equipment. So preemptively, you're not supposed to be wearing it. But when the shit hits the fan, there's nothing that precludes you from putting it on. Like everything else, when it's no longer a peaceable protest, you're not peaceably protesting, you don't have your rights are no longer protected under the First Amendment.
Let me ask you this then: if it's not a protest,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
something
different, right?
right, it's different then. And also, the police commissioner, I'm sure, and the chief of department, probably the chief of patrol, can also foresee things like tonight's events and say, bring your helmets in and wear your hats and bats, right? So
I remember going to details, Rob, and my helmet was hanging
yeah,
off my PR-24 on my belt. And you're walking and you're carrying the damn thing. You know, if you were close by and, you know, we used to put them in the van, but you're kind of risking it because if the shit hits the fan, now you got to get to the van to get your helmet.
right.
But I've been at details where you hang out and your helmet is hanging over your nightstick or your PR-24 on your belt, and it's heavy, so it's hanging heavy. So it's just added weight pulling down on you. So, yeah, I agree. So Sleepy Joe has a question. Besides the blood bank and injured PO transport, what other stuff does highway transport? So I know that they do executive protection or executive detail transports where high value dignitary protection transports, I'll call it, right? Where they escort dignitaries from other countries, like around the UN when the UN General Assembly is going on, or if there's a visiting dignitary high value, they'll do those escorts as well. They also do escorts for funerals for members of the service and sometimes their families. Anything else you can think of, Rob?
Yeah, they do a lead for the emergency service unit vehicles. Some of the Bearcats, but not the Bearcat, but usually the Bear, which is this a bigger vehicle. They'll actually escort them to the scene because that's I don't want to say nondescript, but that's a dark vehicle. It diminished the lights on it because of the ballistic protection and the weight of the vehicle. So they'll do that also. And I know that when the total containment vehicle for when the bomb squad, recovers a suspected device, they put it in the ESU's total containment vehicle. They'll also do the lead for that as well. So, and like you said, the POTUS details and things like that.
All right. Do you guys think mounted should be deployed to MSG, and do you think that would serve as a deterrent for disorder? Go ahead. We both have the same. I know that we both feel the same way about this. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should be deployed 100%. For whatever reason, I don't know why there was some agreement or whatever where they weren't going to be deployed because of the injuries that they may cause. They're known as the 10-foot cop mounted because they are up on the horse and they can see the crowd. They can see that things going on. I can remember when it was Occupy Wall Street, we had a string of the 5 horses in the front, and they would tell us, hey, there's a guy, in the red shirt. He's looking to pick up some, water bottles or whatever to throw at you guys or whatever. So, I mean, their elevation gave a great view of everything. And I've seen them in crowd controls, and they push the people out of the way. People are afraid of horses.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, for whatever reason, the city doesn't, isn't allowed to deploy them or doesn't want to because of the injuries that people sustain when a horse tramples them. Because a horse doesn't know any better, right? I rode horses when I was younger. I rode, English and Western, so I'm familiar with horses. And you can control a horse somewhat, but when a horse starts to get spooked or wants to go in a certain way, I don't care what you do to that horse. That horse is going that way. So,
Rob, you just burned an image of you and Chaps into my brain.
it was, yeah, I still have them. If you want to, maybe next podcast,
No,
I'll
that's
wear them.
All right. Here's Delray 55, always on point with good questions at the end of the show. What factors would cause an executive to do an interim evaluation on an MOS, and what effect can it have on an officer's career aspirations? Good question. I think we've kind of touched on this in the past. Someone has to have negative performance to have an interim evaluation done on them, whether it's behavioral or performance. And again, it's not about quotas. It's not about that, they don't want to do a book of summonses. They don't want to make a collar a quarter or a collar a month or whatever the expectations are. When you come to work every day and you try to say that you have observed no violations, your job as a law enforcement officer, I'm sorry, it's in your title. You raised your right hand, you swore to protect and serve and uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state and the city. And when you go out there and you get direction to address specific conditions with enforcement, and you just don't have that ability, and you go out there for 8 hours a day and you're telling me that you see nothing, you're driving around with blinders on. That's one thing where your performance is subpar, especially in comparison to your peers on your same tour. So if your peers are driving around for 8 hours a day for 12 to 15 tours a month, and they have the ability to observe violations and you don't, there's a problem. And it also should not go directly to an interim evaluation. You should have been counseled prior. Well, I was very big on my supervisors doing counselings, both verbal and documenting it, and then written and documenting it, just a 49 to file, which means that I sat down and I spoke to you about X, Y, and Z, do a 49 to file on the computer. It never has to show up anywhere and never touches your career, never hurts you until your behavior or performance doesn't improve, because then it's just documented as an ongoing occurrence and that you did something as a supervisor to try and correct the condition and correct the behavior, and or someone their behavior and their attitude just completely sucks and they're disrespectful. So you can do an interim evaluation on that. Where it can affect and have an effect on an officer's career aspirations, anytime you have an interim evaluation, it's on your record forever. No matter where you want to go, it will be questioned. As a matter of fact, not even an interim evaluation. If you get a below standards, a 2.5, right? 3.0 is meets standards in the evaluation system with the NYPD. If you get a 2.5 in any dimension, in any area in your evaluation, a 2 or a 2.5 or a 1, which would really be horrible, those will also be on your central personnel index for your entire career. You don't need an interim evaluation. If you get a below standards evaluation in any dimension, it comes up on your CPI and you will be questioned anywhere you go for an interview for your career.
Yeah, so the only thing I'll add to that is if you do get an interim evaluation, it is in your best interest to get a really good evaluation the next time on your annual or your quarterly or whatever they have now, because everybody, when you're going for an interview, you can explain, I had a dip, I had a little problem. Sometimes guys will say it was the sergeant didn't like me. I didn't fall, which it doesn't usually fare well with the interviewers. We don't want to hear that, but you could say, I did have a problem. I felt what I needed to do, and I corrected myself, and my next evaluation shows that I improved. So what we do is we look for that, good evaluations, then a dip, oh, I got an interim evaluation, which I'm not a bit advocate of, but it's a necessary tool. And then, oh, I corrected myself and now I sustained back to where I was. So that's how it's explainable. That's how it would fare out in an interview that, hey, everybody has a, a bad couple of months or a problem or whatever. But the point being is that I saw what I had a problem and I corrected it. And that's what you want to present in the interview. Everybody's going to say, why'd you get this bad evaluation, interim evaluation? Okay, well, I had a problem and this, I was, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, but I realized my mistake and I corrected it. And now I'm back up to where I should be. So.
And listen, for those who want to use the sergeant didn't get along with me and look at all my other evaluations with all my other supervisors, don't forget that an interim evaluation and or a below standards evaluation must be signed off by the commanding officer. So they must concur and they must agree, because I've gotten evaluations that I did not agree with and I kicked it back and I said, you better rethink this, because if you really want to stand by it, you have that option. But then I'm going to have the lieutenant or myself are going to do a second evaluation to counter it. And then it looks bad on the supervisor because now you're not evaluating people appropriately. So if it's signed off by the boss, bosses do not sign off on interim evaluations or substandard evaluations very easily because they know the ramifications and how that's going to affect someone's career. 92 Charlie. I love this show and respect both of your perspectives on topics. Thank you, brother. We appreciate that. Who do you think is going to replace Tish as the PC? I know it was a topic of discussion in the past, but who's it going to be? I think we get this is the most asked question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sticking to my answer. I think it's going to be Issa Abbasi.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's already been picked, ready to go.
Let's see. Let me see.
Mikey G said, "I never had an exit interview." I don't think anybody did. I don't remember ever seeing any paperwork or doing anything. So never had one for myself either.
Phil loves making this comment. Never considered any boss in the NYPD an executive. They were civil service employees, not executives. Okay, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it. God bless
that's
you.
Cool. Yep.
All right. And that's it. Mike Keller's asking the same question. So, all right, we appreciate all of your input. We appreciate everything and the interaction with the chat, as always, was active and very interactive again today. What did I miss, QC Beast? Which one did I miss?
Mikey says he was only kidding about the exit interview, but it's true. I don't know anybody that ever got one. They just, and they should,
Did you see what I missed? Yours?
No, I unless it was
Hold on, let me go back up.
Second one for the PC, right? I don't know. We saw that.
Okay, here we go. Sorry, QC Beast, I missed this one. If there's a riot, the level like 92 riots or the 77 blackout, what's the highest mobilization level, and would the protest agreement go out the window? Well, the highest mobilization level is a level 4 mobilization where you're getting people from all over the city to go somewhere.
Yeah, I think you're getting 1 in 8 from every command.
Every command. And that's for like a full-blown mass casualty incident or something like that. The 77 blackout, I don't think you're really calling a level 4 mobilization because the entire city is out. So you need to keep your resources spread out throughout the city.
I think what you're doing with that is you're canceling RDOs and recalling everybody.
Right.
Maybe.
Right. You're going to throw the chart out the window and everybody's coming in. But the protest settlement agreement, listen, the chart can be thrown out by the police at the discretion of the police commissioner, which means for those non-NYPD people, when the chart is thrown out, that means that days off can be canceled. That's not throwing the chart out. But when you throw the chart out or suspend the chart, you're in effect have the ability to violate the contract and cancel people's annual vacation picks, which are guaranteed days off contractually, and individual vacation days that are selected, at the beginning of the year. So those things would happen. As far as the protest settlement agreement, it doesn't go out the window because that's law. That was signed into law, and it's being monitored by the court. But again, if you follow the protest settlement agreement, there has to be peaceable protests, and that's what you're there to protect the rights of the protesters and the counter protesters. Hope I answered your question. Anything else on that one, Rob?
No, that was it. So I think
All right.
that the executive, when we say executive, that actually comes from the department, right? Because when they say executive all in, they use the terminology.
Executive core.
Right. I mean, I guess not necessarily saying, I mean, whatever, you go by your rank. So whatever, but I just, executive is just kind of an overview of the particular positions within the department. But is it a civil service rank? 100%. So we're all captains. We're all captains acting as whatever rank we are. So because that's your last civil service rank is the captain. So
definition of an executive is a person or role with managerial or administrative authority in an organization, responsible for making high-level decisions and ensuring plans are successfully put into action.
Yeah, I don't know.
There you go. So,
that's our executive. That's our executive thought.
Yeah.
Marlon's saying no main topic for Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I'm sure they'll be talking about some craziness from tonight. So.
Yes. So let me set up a couple of things here. So anything else? Anything you want to close out before we hit the rest of the show?
No, I think I don't know if Phil the Heater guy in 92 Charlie might have just been messing with us. They said they're having some fun with the word executive. So
that's all right.
But yeah, we're cool about it. Whatever you guys. Just don't
Even
call
if
me
you don't
late.
like it.
Don't call me late for dinner. That's all.
I'm Ron now. We just call it the executive perspective because we were executives in the executive corps.
That's what I was. One day in the chat, somebody was saying, "Oh, do your neighbors still call you chief?" Because sometimes people just like to call you. They like the name. Like if somebody talks to me, or like if I talk to somebody and they were a higher rank, I call them chief. Hey, chief, how are you? I still say it. So they say they were kidding around in the chat, like, "Oh, do you call people and then ask them to call you chief?" I go, "No, I don't. Nobody calls me chief." He goes, "What about your neighbors? Yeah, make them call you chief." I said, "Listen, if they call me chief, I don't tell them not to." So
I stop people when they call me boss or inspector. Still, I'm like, "Listen, it's Ron." Especially now I'm retired. I'm just Ron at this point. But you're right. I still do the same thing. I was speaking to a retired 2-star chief recently, Brian McCarthy. I love the guy. And he got his doctorate recently since he retired. So I'm like, do I have to call you like Dr. Chief now?
Yeah.
It's still just Brian, but, do I have to call you Dr. Chief? But, we're hoping to get him on in the near future to memorialize his career. But all right. Let's get to the super chat. We only got one today, but we appreciate it. We mentioned it earlier. Detective Nolan, thank you very much. It's $10 to the podcast for Ron getting his voice back, which he's appreciative of, but not everybody was. We'll leave it that. Some other people weren't so happy. But yeah, all right. So Marlon said it on Friday. The roundtable will be back with John, Eric, and Marlon. They don't have a topic. It's the roundtable. They'll be talking about whatever's popular. I'm sure they'll talk about the watch party being canceled, as well as whatever shenanigans happen tonight with Game 4. hopefully they don't have a lot to talk about, but let's leave it at that. And then they'll be back on Monday again. On Tuesday, you have the 10-4 Tavern with Tom Joyce and Pete Faselli. And again, go back last night. Oh, Tom just texted me something, but that was something else. That emailed. He had Dr. York Kleinhandler, who was a former U.S. Marshal Service in the U.S. Marshal Service, but also Army Special Forces with multiple deployments overseas. Had some great stories. Go back and check that out. He speaks on leadership. He had a lot of great insight on leadership. So go back and check that show out. We always recommend you go back and check out their shows. They bring on, their thing is they have the story, I forget the exact quote, but they want the people to tell the stories that were actually involved in the story. So they bring on people that have been involved in notorious cases and speak from firsthand knowledge. So great show and great content. So go back and check out last night's episode. We'll be back again next week at 5:05 p.m. And then until then, let's go. Best of luck to the Knicks and game 4. So until then, we want everybody, again, that's going to be out there to remain safe. Keep your head on a swivel. And anything else before we go, Rob?
Yeah, no, just if you're a fan and you're at the game and you're lucky enough to get the $3,000 seat, as Marlon showed us earlier today in the Blues. But if you're able to get them, good luck, enjoy. If you're at a watch party, be careful, watch your back. And if you're out there, doing patrol and you're out there at the detail, be careful, stay safe. And, appreciate everybody in the chat. Sleepy Joe, 92 Charlie, Terry Manane, Mikey G. Everybody, appreciate the interaction because you guys keep us going, and we love the interaction. So, but everybody, enjoy the game. Enjoy the game tonight.
All right, everybody, be safe out there.
Be safe.